They were going to give me $1 million, he said, to shoot the pilot. I thought, man, this is my break. This is it, you know. Producer's job, that's the crazy thing about producing. So many people don't know what a producer is. And it's because producer means so many things. Some people have made six figures almost monthly on Tubi. Yeah, I've seen the numbers myself. Yeah, they offered me a $2.2 million budget for the film if I didn't act as the lead role. And I basically was like, I can't do that. So,
Adam, you once said that 99% of filmmakers will never make a second film. How do you feel about this now?
It's crazy how much things have changed and how fast things have changed. Technology's made things so much easier. And I talk about that a lot recently, because it's like back in 2007, 2008, you couldn't even get depth of field. You couldn't even use lenses. And now it's so much easier to make a film. So as much as before, if you made one film, you're probably not going to make a second one. Now someone can make a first film now, have no success, and still make a second film. As to, well, the first time I said that probably wasn't the case, because they had to spend a lot of money. You don't have to anymore, as much as you did, I would say.
And when we talked to you about that before, you had only made one feature, or no, at that point?
I just made WALLY Got Wasted, so that was my first feature, yes. And now I made a full TV series, which is like 3 features. Bad Advice is like 3 features. It's like 4 hours, 4.5 hours worth of content. So 7 episodes. Each episode's about 30 to 40 minutes long. So I guess I didn't follow that rule of never making another one. But now I'm working on my second feature as well. Right now it's called Attachment Theory, but the name might change. And yeah, it's just a lot easier to make films nowadays. So I do think people, probably the percentage of people that make a second film probably has gone up a lot, I would think.
Right, and I didn't mean to say that Bad Advice wasn't worthy of being sort of feature length.
No, I didn't take it that way.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is, do you think people realize either how hard it is, they get like sort of jaded after a first feature, maybe they have more hopes for it, and they quit, or it's a money issue?
I think it's both. I think people have money issues with features. It does take money to do this stuff if you want to do it well. I mean, you can, and it is getting easier and easier with sound mixing, with color, with LUTs being easier, and color correction, and just to make things look better has gotten a lot easier. But a lot of people make a first feature and they thought this was going to break them in, and it doesn't quite do that, and it discourages them. And I understand people, what am I doing in life? That's a huge question. Of why you're doing this and why you're making films, because you're just a filmmaker or because you have a desire to be famous or whatever that is. And filmmaking is becoming more niche-y, I feel like, than ever, because so many people want to be Instagram stars and TikTok stars and, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely more of to meet someone that has watched a lot of films and study film is a lot more rare, I feel like, than it was 10 years ago. So that's what I think. When you hear statistics like kids are spending 6 hours on Instagram, they're not watching movies. I don't think someone who's spending that much time on TikTok or Instagram is not watching films that often. Sometimes people don't even watch any nowadays. Talk to me, I'm not a movie or TV person, but they spend 6 hours on Instagram or TikTok.
Right. Well, and it's very easy to get. It
sucks you in.
Yeah, it's built into the way it works. But was there ever a moment, though, that you thought you were making a second feature or a TV series, and there were moments of doubt where you just didn't want to go through this again? Not the fun of being on set and meeting all the actors and crew, but in terms of trying to get it distributed.
So I'm lucky. I work for a distribution company at this point, so I help filmmakers get on Tubi and Crackle and Shine TV and a few others. So I have a little bit of an in there. And so I've been doing that and trying to learn as much as possible to do that. Is it discouraging distribution? Absolutely. For many filmmakers, if you have an expectation, it's very hard. If you do it for the love, you won't be disappointed. But if you do it for a result, you can't really control the result of how people take your art. I made Bad Advice because I wanted people to laugh, you know what I mean, and add positivity to their day, and hopefully they can watch an episode a night or many people watched the whole show and were mad at me the next day. They said, damn you, I started an episode at 11 a.m. and I didn't go to bed till 5 a.m. or whatever, because they couldn't stop watching it. And as much as I feel sorry for them that they didn't get any sleep, I feel good that it was good enough that they didn't want to stop watching it. So that told me at least that one particular person loved the show and took value from it. And that's ultimately what, the reason that I do it is to try to add value to people's lives and make them laugh and forget about their normal everyday problems. I mean, that's at the core of it all. Obviously not something you're thinking about on the daily, but when you sit back and you evaluate, why do I do this, Or we're all here for only so much amount of time. I feel like that's my contribution to society, is me entertain people, or to make them laugh, or on the next one, to make them cry, my next feature, or to give them some kind of emotional roller coaster that makes their lives better or reflects their own lives and they feel connected to other people. So,
you mentioned in our last interview that you didn't want to be one of these people that got stuck in a 9-to-5 job, the people that come to LA, and nothing against 9-to-5 jobs and getting insurance that's provided. That's an easy way to have a good night's sleep. But you said that you wanted to make sure that you made your projects. What about those that are independent, sort of free birds? What are the downsides of that?
It depends what kind of independent free bird you are. I mean, some of the richest people in the world are free birds and they don't follow 9 to 5. So it just depends on where you're at. Are you a waiter? Or are you a public notary? Are you what is your 9 to 5, not 9 to 5 job, but keeping you from doing a 9 to 5 job, and how much money you're making has a lot to do with that. And also how many hours are in the day. Even if you are doing a 9 to 5, you still have that, 6 hours before you go to bed, 5 hours before you go to bed. Are you spending that making films? Are you spending that writing? What are you spending your time doing? You could watch TV or movies, or you could spend time on Instagram. So nothing. You don't have to be, you don't have to not do a 9 to 5 to do this. I know plenty of people that do have 9 to 5s and still do filmmaking or acting or these things, and usually their 9 to 5 is supporting their dream to make films or to act or whatever, write. A lot of them, yeah.
Well, where do you think most independent filmmakers get stuck when they say, no, I'm not going to be in a cubicle, or whatever the 9 to 5 is, or it could be 3 to 11. It might not be a day shift. It might be, mid shift or something. Where do you think some of these independent filmmakers get stuck? Maybe they have their day open.
I think independent filmmakers get stuck by thinking they need other people. I mean, you do need a lot of people, but you don't necessarily need the studio system to make a movie. You need them to distribute it, but not necessarily nowadays. You have Tubi, you have Crackle, you have Pluto, you have Amazon Prime, you have all these outlets now that are allowing independent film on their platforms. That might change, it might not always be that way. You can't get on those platforms independently usually, but through our distribution company, you can get on those platforms. So there are ways out there to do it. I feel the biggest mistake is some people kind of sit on their stuff. They get really frustrated. They put really a lot of pressure on themselves that their first feature is going to be big, but it's your first film. Why would you think it's going to be big in a way? You have so much to learn on your first film. I laughed at our last interview because WALLY Got Wasted, I said in the interview, people can't see what you learn on your film. So they don't know how good you are now. They're judging you by the last thing that you did. And people actually in the comments were like, well, this film was, they criticized my film, WALLY Got Wasted. And it was like, well, yeah, I just talked about how much stuff I learned on my first feature. That was the whole point of the discussion, was that people learn from doing, and then you have to take that knowledge and do something else and make it better. If you don't go do it again, then you don't have the knowledge that you got from the first one, from making it, falling on your face sometimes, or getting an audience to criticize what you did so that you go, oh, people didn't like that, or people didn't laugh there in that section, or whatever, whatever you learned. That's why I'm always curious to talk to filmmakers about, well, what did you learn? What would you not do again? What turned out fantastic? Their trials and tribulations, because each individual is going to find something different that they learned. So.
Right, and I'm just in compliment to you. Your first film is funny and has high production value. I watched it on Tubi last night. So, and I've seen other first films that are maybe more rough around the edges. So I would say, hats off to you on that one. I wouldn't say it looks totally like a first film.
Well, that was kind of the point. WALLY Got Wasted was my first feature, and it's on Tubi and Pluto and Crackle, a lot of platforms. We made it for only 70 grand. And so, and the funny part is now 70 grand is less money, but also you could do a lot more with 70 grand when it comes to certain technology has changed. So WALLY Got Wasted has clubs, it has, grocery stores, it has house parties, there's a lot of production value in it, fast food restaurants, a cave, I think it's funny, I saw a film recently and he had no transitions. It was room to room, and it literally, he never went outside. And I just don't understand fully some filmmakers, because I'm like, if you don't have it, go get it, get drone shots. There's a lot of easy ways to kind of make your movie breathe, But we were really lucky on WALLY Got Wasted. I got very lucky on that whole project. My whole crew was from Teen Wolf, the TV show, and they came over and they worked on WALLY Got Wasted. And I managed to, like I said, so many people helped me. People gave us 5-ton grip truck for a very, very good price. RE Alexa, all these things came, and so many people supported me. I'm just very grateful. And that's part of making films, and that's part of being a filmmaker, is convincing people to believe in you and your vision. That's probably maybe the biggest part, because ultimately, if you really want to get to the studio system, you have to make them believe that you're the right person to tell this story and to believe in your story. So you have to be doing that on a smaller scale, and that's a big part of the job, is communicating and making people believe in your vision. Because if they come with passion and everybody comes with their artistic ability to make it better, it's going to be a much better project, for sure.
And the studio system is something that you still want, or are you happy continually doing your films? Because they are your films, they have your humor, you get to be in them, you get to cast the people you want to cast. I'm
sure there's pluses and minuses to everything. I will say my next feature, I was offered a lot more money to not act in it. They wanted me to direct, They offered me a $2.2 million budget for the film if I didn't act as the lead role. And I basically was like, I can't do that. So maybe I'll sell out more afterwards, but I was like, my next feature is called Attachment Theory. It's an action drama film that I'm shooting now. And I wanted to, and I'm the sole lead in the movie, and I wanted to at least attempt that, because all the TV show's a 4-person lead. Bad Advice is a 4-person lead. WALLY Got Wasted's a 3-person lead. I've never led a movie by myself, and I wanted to prove I could do it, as well as learn and have that journey. So I didn't want to deprive myself of that. And I knew if I didn't do it now, I might not ever do it. So,
okay. Because, sorry to interrupt, but I was wondering, did you do the math on that and think, well, I could take that money and then make another one?
They didn't offer me $2.2 million to put in my pocket. They offered it to make the movie. I told my mom that, and she's like, well, take the money. I'm like, Mom, I don't get to keep the $2.2 million. How much money would I make on that? Maybe $100,000 if I'm lucky. And $100,000 is not going to change my life in LA.
That is true, in LA, right. The ending of that is very true. Yeah,
yes.
LA.
Yes. So, but the show was 100% me. The show Bad Advice is on Tubi right now. People can watch it on Tubi. And we shot 54 days, 100 locations, 100 actors. And I mean, you can't get more independent than Bad Advice, because it was COVID. Nobody was doing anything. And so I think we did a good job of keeping masks, for the most part, out of the show. But nobody was doing anything. So it was like, we have to make things small. The smaller, the better. Because the bigger we have it, the more chance someone's going to get COVID, or, So the fact that COVID was going on was partial the reason I did the show. I wrote it. So Bad Advice, I wrote 2 episodes in 2012. And then finally COVID happened, and I was like, I better start writing again. So the end of 2020, I started writing and I wrote the whole rest of the season. And then I wrote it in January, and I wrote like each episode in 3 days. I was writing 10 pages a day, which is an insane schedule, but I was by myself and I was just like, I'm gonna get this done. I'd outline one day and then write 3 days. But I had all these ideas. I've been saving ideas for like 10 years. I wanted to do that show, and I talked about it the last time we were interviewed. I don't know if you remember. But then I wrote it in January, and then by March we were shooting. So it was still heavily COVID. Nobody was really doing anything. And because we kept it small, we got into a lot of places for free too. Like restaurants and stuff. I'd come in and they were only doing takeout, and the whole place is empty. You know, there were so many places that were empty because people couldn't have anybody in their business. And I was like, hey, do you think we could come in here and shoot and film? And a lot of places let us in, probably because they were dead. Nobody was in there. You know, and I don't remember if people were allowed to come in or they just weren't coming in, but it seemed to help us a lot. So 100 locations is not an easy task to find, but we found them. I found them all the locations, so.
I believe you said you once had a job where you would read screenplays. How many screenplays did you read on that job?
I used to work for Todd Phillips, who's doing the Joker 2 right now, and he did the Hangover movies. I needed the Joker 1. But I used to read, they wanted me to read at least 3 a day. I'm a slow reader, so, you know, I'd be lucky to get 3 done a day. But you had to do notes. You had to do a 1-page summary of the script, you know, to get to Todd Phillips. So, yeah, you'd have to read 3 a day. And if, you know, if you didn't get through the 3, you almost had to make it up in a way. I mean, they expected you to get through 3. And I was the first guy in the office, you know, that people would meet. And if the script got through me, the people above me would only read my summary, most of them. They wouldn't read the actual scripts, you know. If it got through me and I thought it was great, then maybe they'd read it, and then up the ladder it would go from there. So if you didn't, I think I said this last time, but if you don't get through the front desk guy, you're never getting to the people that actually make the decisions. Everybody in that office should like you. Everybody should like your art, your script, or whatever. So it's very important that you're never a jerk to anybody that you meet in this industry. And that's why this industry is such a way nobody gives you an honest answer, because they have no idea if you're going to be somebody important later, which doesn't help your learning, but at the same time, it helps your ego in a way, because nobody ever tells you that you're bad at anything. But that's just the way that it is, you know.
Sometimes I do, but yeah, I
mean. Well, anywhere else, I mean, on the East Coast or other places, they're not afraid to lay into you.
No.
You know, hard love is very much an East Coast thing, but in West Coast, everyone's like, I hate that nobody tells the truth, but it's because nobody knows, like, your dad could be running a studio, and if you offend me, now you're never going to work with that studio. I mean, there's all those kinds of things that come into play in LA. You know, nobody knows if you have money, and nobody knows who you know that's important, or if you're ever going to be important. And credentials aren't always what gets you to those positions. So that's why it's all kind of ran on fear, I guess you should say, in a way, of telling somebody the truth.
Sure, but you know, then there's also the people that, and I don't want to use this term, it's very derogatory, so the star clingers, we'll call them.
Okay.
And so you can kind of sense that as well. And I think that is a huge turnoff too. When someone... I'm cleaning up my language, but the people that are out to only sort of latch on to the next opportunity. And I think once you've been in this area for a long time, you can also sense that. And I think that's a huge turnoff. And so I'm not even sure what's worse, someone that's a quote unquote jerk or maybe just not as friendly versus one that's like a social climber.
I think it's hilarious because so many people in this industry do that. They try to like reach up and grab somebody, and it's just such a waste of time. Especially because the stars, the people that you recognize, they're usually actors, and actors are never going to help another actor's career. Generally, I know people that know huge movie stars, and they're good friends, and they went to college with them, and now they don't help them at all. I mean, like, actors are not there to help other actors; they're there to help themselves. A director, somebody, really ultimately the best thing you can do is look to your left and to your right. And the people that are talented, that are around you, that are nobody, those are the people you should connect with the most. because reaching up is useless in so many ways. Like, and I mean, I worked for Steven Spielberg at DreamWorks. I mean, I was surrounded by, you know, I'd pass him, you know. And my biggest regret with all that is that I didn't make him laugh. I didn't make him, you know, remember my name, you know. Because then maybe if he saw my talent later, he would remember me. Because if I would have been like, hey, well, he's one of the very few people in this industry that could change your life. But most people, they can't change your life. They're busy trying to get the next job, you know. And that's kind of how it is. I know a lot of people now that have kind of raised to the top. You know, Paul Walter Hauser is one of them. He was a friend of mine, and he went to the premiere of WALLY Got Wasted, and took me to lunch afterwards, and he was like, I want to be in every movie you do. That movie was amazing. I can't believe you did it for 70 grand. I loved WALLY Got Wasted. I want to be in everything. And then I, Tonya dropped, and then Black Klansman dropped, and then now he's won an Emmy. He's doing like the Naked Gun movie with Liam Neeson, you know. So, and he's a huge movie star. He doesn't, you know, he won't be in my stuff now because it's like, do I want to come out for your independent project, or do I want to be in Naked Gun? There's only so much time in the day, and they're offering me $1 million and you have no money. So it's like, I understand that to a certain extent. But that's kind of comes back to the original question, which is reaching up. These people are very busy and they're surrounded by people that are advising them. So many people have turned me down to be in independent projects because their whole team would be mad at them. Their whole team makes money off of what they do.
Do you think when you first came to LA in 2006, was that right?
Yeah.
That you were hoping to be cast and chosen, and then as time went on and you kind of saw how things work, you enjoyed being the one putting the project together and casting yourself?
Oh gosh, the journey's been is so different. You know, when I first got here, I didn't even know what to do. I didn't have a headshot. I had to take acting classes to learn, oh, you got to audition. And then how do I get into the auditions? I didn't know about Actors Access and LA Casting. I learned about them and then started doing as many auditions as I possibly could. And I went to colleges, as many college films as I could be in, I was in. And then I was a lead in 3 independent features in 2010. And all 3 features weren't very good. So that's what encouraged me to get behind the camera. I was like, I'm giving it my all, and I'm meeting people that don't really seem to know fully what they're doing. I thought I could do better myself behind the camera. And so that's why I transitioned to behind the camera, to make sure that the film looks at least as good as it needs to look and all that stuff. So that's one of the reasons why WALLY Got Wasted looks like it has so much production value, because I'm very much a stickler on that stuff and trying to keep scenes under 3 minutes and to move along the story to keep people entertained. And also, why are we, you know, things that happen like this on independent films, when I would act in them, they'd put me up against the wall, you know, and why am I acting against the wall and the other person's acting against the wall? Like, what? Like, set design, like, stick us outside, stick us anywhere where the background's more interesting. I mean, all those things you have to think about. So as an actor, I never put any of that stuff on my mind. You know, I was focused on acting, which is what I needed to be focused on. But the filmmakers weren't. So that's what encouraged me to get behind the camera. And then 2011, I directed my first thing, which was 3 Guys on a Couch. And then 2014, I directed my second TV pilot, which is Parole Officers. That's on Tubi. People can go watch that. That's just a 30-minute comedy TV pilot. And then 2017, I finally made my first feature, which is WALLY Got Wasted, which is on a lot of platforms, Tubi, Crackle, a lot of them, but watch it on Tubi. And then Bad Advice was done in 2021 and literally just came out a few months ago. And Bad Advice is 7 episodes, 30 minutes long each. It's very similar to, most people say, Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was, you know, the inspiration behind that. And that whole journey with that, and that's kind of where and now I'm making my new feature. So that's the progression of my career, and I did auditions up to about 2014, and then I lost my manager, I think because I was making Parole Officers, and she was trying to send me out auditions, and I was like, I'm too busy like making a film, I can't go audition right now, and that was kind of the end of that. And I've auditioned since. I have agent that that sends me out occasionally, but it's really hard to learn, put a lot of time into a character, learn lines and all that stuff when I could be putting the time into the next film. So that's kind of where my brain is with the whole thing. As to where if someone comes to me, offer me a part, I can start working on making that film better and then work on the acting. But if I'm just auditioning, there's no guarantee. It's a roll of the dice, So you're going to spend time and maybe no reward. So you better look at auditioning as your job if you're going to audition and dive in 100%, so.
But that is a tough road, and not just the act of being rejected, yes or no, but just getting anywhere in LA and finding parking, and that's its own stressor that you don't necessarily think about until you do it.
I'd say 80 to 90% of auditions nowadays are you've taped yourself and you send it in. So
sure.
That's most of them. So the parking and all that isn't really, unless you're doing like screen tests, then you're really at the end of the process. But no, for the most part, God, I can't remember the last time I got called in for an in-person audition. They are interviews, but audition, yeah. They don't do them that often, which is
okay,
crazy.
So maybe I'm from an older mindset because I don't remember doing
they just don't do them anymore.
Self-tape.
Yeah,
right.
This background behind me would be, basically, well, it would be a flat color, but you would audition, you'd tape yourself with the camera, same as you're doing, and then you'd send it in, and you never meet someone, you don't get feedback, it's literally just off to the ether. And, if you get the part, you hear something, if you don't, you hear nothing, So that's pretty much auditioning nowadays. You tape yourself, which is crazy in a way if you think about it, because sometimes you get a job. Many people I know have gotten jobs, and they get on set and they've never met the director, they've never met the producer, and that blows my mind because it's like you got to work with this person and you don't even know if you like vibe or get along creatively with them. So that's shocking to me, but it happens all the time. So
it's interesting because it seems like there's certain things that I noticed there where it's like you not bothered by it, but it almost seems like a blessing in that then it makes you do it yourself. Like you talked about the transitions from no, but I think that's actually a plus because then it makes you want to be better. If like when you see that and you're like, why did they do that? You're questioning it, and it kind of gets under your skin a little bit, and that's actually helpful.
I would say it is. I mean, I learn more from a bad film than a good film, and that's only if the bad film's trying to be good. Like, just a bad film trying to be bad, you're not going to learn anything. But if there's not so many mistakes that you can see some good in it, and then you go, oh, wait, why did they do that? That was pretty good. And then they cut to another room with no drone shot, with no exterior. Why would you do that? You got to give an audience the time to breathe. And I'm very strongly opinionated about film, as you can tell. So when I watch a film, it's usually I'm thinking I would have done something different. I would have done that different or this different. And so then I try to apply that to my films and make them better. But at the same time, making films is an amazing thing that you can have it in your head what the movie we want to look like, and it doesn't always come out that way. It doesn't always feel that way. There's all kinds of things. So then what you had in your head might have been amazing and everyone loved it, but now you have something different. And sometimes different's better and sometimes different's worse. And then you have to make the decision, am I going to go back and reshoot because it's not as good as I want it to be? Or it's not the same? Do I like it more? Do I like it less? And so all those decisions you have to make, which is interesting. I feel like the feature I'm doing now, I don't want any excuses with it. So it's like, we have a car crash that we just did in my next feature, and there's special effects involved. I had to do rope work and get tied up with ropes and fly in front of a green screen and all these kinds of things. And I'm heavily depending on my special effects people. So it's like, let's see if it looks real when I get it back. And if it doesn't look real, I have to figure something out because it has to look real or there's no point, I have to have the audience believe that this person just got in a car wreck, And there's so many movies nowadays that special effects don't look real. I just watched King Kong vs. Godzilla or whatever yesterday, and not one moment, it just looks like a cartoon, and there's not one moment they look real. That was fine for them, and they made almost $500 million, so clearly they're doing something right. But for me personally, I didn't particularly enjoy the movie because it was too cartoony for me. So everyone has their taste, and some people are fine with that special effects. I personally think CGI, anything nowadays that is CGI, could you have shot it practical? And if you can shoot it practical, you should shoot it practical. But I'm an old school mentality of thinking, I love sci-fis and things that you actually have real things to touch and feel. And I was in Hungary and they were making the new Alien movie. And I got to meet all the set design people and a lot of the people that worked on the new Alien movie, and they built so much, that was real, and they want, so they were talking about a lot of that. And someone I knew, actually, it was the designer of a lot of the Alien stuff, and so it's a lot of artistic stuff that go into it, and build it, make it in real life so it looks real. I think makes it so much better for a movie. So, and for the actors who have to act with it instead of acting with a green screen or a blue screen or whatever.
Is it fair to say you've read hundreds of screenplays in your lifetime?
Maybe. Read over 100. I don't know about hundreds. When I had the job reading scripts, I only worked there 3 months. So, you could count up how many there. I've read a lot of them. I think when I write, I think more of the movies, and I've definitely seen 10,000 to 100,000 movies in my life. So I think more in the movie sense of when I'm writing, It's funny because structure is really good for some people. I think the only time you should not be looking at structure is if you've already done it so much and you know it inside and out that you can break certain rules. I think people that don't even learn about it and they write, what do you do? You don't know about your craft. Like, what are you doing? And it might be good for people that don't know what they're talking about, but people that have seen 10,000 movies or more, you could get lucky, but chances are you might end up boring them. So some structure would usually be pretty good, a beginning, middle, and an end, So I just saw Horizon, Kevin Costner's movie, and it did, he's making like a TV series without a beginning, middle, and an end in that first movie, and it's 3 hours long, and you're trying to change the medium, and that's something totally different. But mostly screenplays should have audiences should have some kind of idea what they're in store for. It actually helps them process the movie and watch it better, because they don't have to worry about, I know this movie's going to end in an hour and a half or whatever it is. They know something what's coming helps them. It helps them like the movie, it seems like to me. I don't know.
But maybe not so much that they can just totally see the ending?
No, I don't think they want to know what's predictable 100%. But I think a 3-act structure was made a long time ago, in movies, and it's worked for so very long. It's kind of like the same themes you see in movies and stuff like that. Human beings have been telling stories for hundreds, thousands of years. It's an art form that's been crafted, and there's value in that. Now, I'm not saying you can't break the rules and change things. And ultimately, the art form is always changing in some kind of way, but also it's staying the same in a lot of ways too. So, write, if you're going to write, you should be reading scripts, you should be studying how to make scripts, and studying the movies, and then crafting them into your own personal stories, and changing them from what they were on the screen already, other people's movies. So.
And of the screenplays that you read, you said maybe 100, how many have been turned into film or television, actual projects?
Gosh, not many, to be honest with you. Maybe 10, 20 tops, Even some of the really good scripts that I read, there was a script, I might have signed an NDA, but I don't even remember. I don't think I did. It's been so long, I'll still talk about it. There was a script called Manwich that was at Todd Phillips's office. And I thought we were going to make that. They were so gung-ho on this script, and they ended up making Hangover instead. And I was gung-ho on Hangover, I remember reading Hangover script, and it was like, it was amazing, It was a murder mystery comedy, and no one had done anything in that vein before. And I always thought Hangover was going to be huge. And I was walking around the office. There's only 5 or 6 people in Todd Phillips's office, maybe less. And I was always like, when are we going to do Hangover? Forget this other script, And And they ended, obviously Todd was thinking the same thing. I don't know, you know, I don't think anyone was necessarily listening to me, but he definitely made Hangover, and it was a huge success. So, but yeah, there was other movies, you know, there was some movies I read there that Todd wasn't going to do that got turned into a script. Or there was How High or something. There was some other movies that were made independently back then, actually, that production company, Green Hat, turned down, and they made independently. There's Friends scripts that I've read that they ended up making, you know, and sometimes you give them notes and they change it, and sometimes, you know, people don't want your notes, you know, and I never give anyone notes if they didn't ask me for notes, you know. I don't criticize, and also I don't criticize their film if they don't ask what I think about it. It's, you know, everyone assumes, it's so funny, so many people assume that you want their opinion, and it's a funny thing because everyone's got an opinion. So you think, and they come from a place they think they're going to make you better, but the truth is it's just their opinion. There's no real right answer in art. And maybe they have a valid opinion and it would help you, but if you didn't ask for it, you're not going to accept their opinion, or the person that you're giving your opinion to is not going to accept it if they didn't ask for it. So.
And then there's the rare ones that really want to see something of yours and then really want to tell you what was wrong with it. There's a small percentage of people that do that in LA, and you will notice that. They don't have to be in LA, but yeah, then and it's learning how to take some of that in. Maybe they're correct in some of what they're saying, and maybe there's other agendas. But yeah, there's some of those too.
I don't hide from it. I mean, like, if I usually let people just talk if they're going to talk. Like, I don't shut them down so much. It's, you know, most people are going to tell you that you did good, even if they don't even think you did good. So it's hard for me sometimes to take a compliment, sadly. And I wish I would take those in more, you know, especially people that genuinely enjoy the things that I make. But it all kind of becomes white noise in a way, because it's like, you can't let the negative affect you, and you can't really let the positive affect you in the sense of ego. You know, you can take the enjoyment from the compliment, but don't think you're necessarily special. I mean, because so many people help you. If you do anything good, usually so many people help you. Even though I wear so many hats. I mean, I'm editing, I'm directing, I'm acting, I wrote them. There's still so many people that help me. So you can take the compliment and feel good about it, but don't let it get to your head.
What do you think is the difference between the film and television projects that you read, the scripts that you read, that got made versus those that did not? What do you think was there, or maybe it varied from project to project?
You know, it's funny. It's like, you'd think it'd be really easy to write a good script, but it's just not, you know? And it also depends where the state of the world is, you know, which is a huge part of it. You know, something that was amazing in the 90s, now people get and they think this is really good, but it's not what people are watching right now, you know? It's like this perfect storm of events, really, to have this script that is in the exact vein of what people need to hear and want to hear, and at the same time entertaining, and in a new, unique voice. Or something also has to kind of be unique about it, but also somewhat similar. You know, I think some of the things that I've read or that I've even written do the best when people go, oh, that's kind of like this or kind of like that. So it has to be somewhat similar in a way. My new script, Attachment Theory, the people that read it, everyone seems to really love the script, but they compare it to True Romance. You know, I've heard it compared to True Romance a lot, and the story's nothing like that, but it's same tone in a way, or something reminds them of that, but then they really like it, you know, as to where, you know, it's never universal though. You're going to have to find one person that thinks your script's amazing and gives you money, or pumps you up to the studio, or whatever it is. And a lot of people don't read, sadly to say. You know, even a lot of people in the studio system don't read, you know, especially agents and managers. A lot of them don't. Some do. I'm not saying all of them, but they're a hype wagon. They're, you know, this is great, or everybody loves it. You know, they'll repeat all the things all day long, but how many people actually read it, you know? How many people watch things nowadays? Now there's so much things to watch, they don't even watch things too. You hand somebody to watch something, and my things, I put so much energy in to make them look great, but it's hard to get somebody to sit down and actually watch your stuff because there's so many people making stuff. There's a lot of white noise. So, you know, they have to watch it, and some people, they watch my stuff a year later and they go, "That's just really good." You know, they're like shocked. I'm like, "Yeah, you should have watched it when I gave it to you a year ago." So that's kind of how that goes. But
you had said Wally Got Wasted was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Weekend at Bernie's meets The Hangover or something.
Yeah.
So you had already had that sort of, you know, this Hollywood hit plus this one equals what the movie is. And you said that's necessary, you think?
I think, you know, if people know it's similar to something else and know that that other thing's successful, it's very easy for them to wrap their brain around this being successful. So to being similar, I think if you're really, really different, not a lot of people can understand it, you know, because most of the decision makers are about money, you know. They're trying to figure out the next thing to make a lot of money. I'd say very, very little amount of studio executives are sitting there going, how do we entertain people in a new way, you know? They're thinking about how do we get something that's going to be a blockbuster hit and make a lot of money. And if your thing is similar to something else that made a lot of money, I'm sad to say it, but the studios are all over those things. You know, oh, it's like Lord of the Rings, or oh, it's like Godzilla, or whatever it is. If it's similar and they can wrap their head around, well, that made a lot of money, so maybe we can ride the coattails of that and make at least this much money. And that's why studios go in such waves of like, oh, this is superhero movies. Superhero movies are in. We can do as many as we possibly can until literally people are like, yeah, we're over it. And then they'll start doing something else. But if they figure out something else is making money, everyone's going to jump on that bandwagon. You know, if a Western made $1 billion yesterday, every studio tomorrow will be making a Western. It's just, but they're not. So then no one's making Westerns, you know. So I think that's kind of how that ebbs and flows. It's all about money.
Well, I know your sister's a musician. Do you think that that's the same in the music industry?
I don't know the music industry as well as I know the film industry. I don't know that I can talk about it educationally, but I think a hit is a hit. If I was to talk about music, I think if it gets stuck in your head, that's a big part of it. And I also think that there's monopolies in music. Spotify now, there's a lot of monopolies that if they play music long enough, it's a hit, as people start singing it. So that business, I have a jaded, you know, point of view on, because I've seen in the inside workings of it a lot.
Sure. Yeah, I was just wondering. I mean, and what you just said, if the song gets stuck in your head, I wonder if it's the same. If the ending, if you're blown away by the ending for the movie, then it's a hit as well. So maybe it's similar.
It's similar in a way, yeah. If I'm thinking about a film a day later, 2 days later, if you can make something that I'm thinking about, you know, a week later, 2 weeks later, you did a really good job making a film. I mean, that's the truth. Sad part is a lot of people go to the shock factor to do that, and that's kind of an easy sell, but people definitely do it. Something in the film that's graphic, you can usually remember it weeks later, days later, as to where it's much harder to make a scene that's two human beings talking, and somehow, because it's so relatable, because it's such a topic that human beings connect to, that they're thinking about it a week later, without all the glitz and the glamour behind it. That's harder to do and usually more respected in our industry.
What if the bad screenplays taught you?
Oh, wow. Get to the point. You know, when you read these screenplays, and if I don't know what your story's about, it doesn't, I need something that latch on to, something to intrigue me, you know, whether that's a character, whether that's a storyline, something that makes me want to keep reading. And so that's why usually your inciting incident is in the first 10 minutes of something. And it used to be 10 minutes, and now people have moved it up a lot, you know, like something crazy or you know, can happen in the first 5 minutes. You know, people like Narc made a huge impact when it came out a long time ago, because they had that chase scene, handheld chase scene right in the beginning of the movie, and it literally happened within the first 3 minutes of the movie, and it was an independent film that blew up. I don't know if you know what that movie was, but and it's because on the page it's not as exciting in a script, but still, if you can write something that captures your audience, that makes them want to keep going, I think that's the number one thing. I think that's what they taught me, was that you need an inciting incident soon. You need to capture people's attention soon. also like I think reading stuff, you realize right away when you read a lot, what is the point of the scene? What is the reason for the scene? And there has to be one, you know, whether it's even regular dialogue to get to know somebody, there's still a reason, you know, that we want to feel like you really know this person, or there has to be a reason behind it, or why is it on the page? And sometimes the bad ones, you'd be like, you don't need this character, you don't need this thing, like cut the fat, you know. Just because you wrote it doesn't mean it's good. So go in there and figure out what you don't need and cut it out, you know. Get to the core of what your story is and tell that story. You only have 2 hours, you know, or an hour and a half, more like, even better. So what is the core of your story? What are the themes to your story? What story do you want to tell? And if you're telling a side story that's not as good, get rid of it, you know. Sometimes people have B and C stories, but they have to be done really well and fast to have those other stories, or they got to be supporting the main theme. So writing a screenplay, you better rewrite usually, you know, to make sure it's better, get feedback. Writing a screenplay is like the best part about that, I think, is that you're at a stage where all you have to do is retype, you know, delete and retype. It's much harder to make changes once you've filmed it. It's much harder to make changes in post if you don't like a scene. I mean, what are you gonna do? You know, as to where you can hand a screenplay to so many people that are good at writing screenplays, and they can give you feedback, and you might agree with it or you might not. But if you give it to 10 different people and you're looking for feedback, you could probably make that screenplay better, you know, as long as you know what story you're telling. And that's another thing. You can't get feedback if you don't know what story you're trying to tell. The feedback will be pointless. You don't even know what you're doing yet. Make sure you've done enough rewrites. You've got your screenplay where you want it to be before you hand it to other people. Because now you're going to be telling their voice, not your voice. And so you have to tell your voice and your story. And when you feel you've nailed it, that's when you go out for feedback. And getting good notes is very hard to come by. You know, there's only a few people that I know that have ever given me good notes, you know. But when you get someone that gives you good notes and knows good stories, their notes come back and you might agree with every single one of them. And you're like, oh yeah. But I've learned to trust my gut more too. You know, if you don't think something's strong enough, it needs to go. Like, if you think something needs to be better, it needs to be better. Like, there is no excuses in this industry if you want to try to make it to the top levels, because there's 1,000 people making Dune, thousands. You know, usually nothing's going to be bad because it's gone through so many eyes, so many people's opinions to make it better. And you just have a screenplay, so it can change as many times as you want. And that's the good part, you know, about the screenplay process is rewrite. You know, it costs nothing.
It sounds like that's very important to you, and that is that the scene does not drag, both visually, directionally in terms of where the actors are going, and dialogue. It's very important to you that it moves along at a fast pace.
100%. I think I'm really admired to certain films, like Tarantino will have a 11-minute scene, and somehow we're entertained. I think a lot of that has to do with finding these amazing actors that some people just have so much gravitas, you can put them on screen and say anything and you almost want to watch, you know. But for the rest of us, shorter is easier. I mean, and that's just the truth. So cut the fat. Or, you know, if you don't want to cut it and you have a scene that's long and you want it to be long, know where your cuts are in editing so that you can shorten it if you need to, you know. And usually WALLY Got Wasted, we shortened scenes. You know, Alex Soul acted a Russian roulette scene in WALLY Got Wasted. And it was a very emotional, funny scene, but it was longer. It was longer than it ended up in the movie. I had to cut certain things. And he was upset that I had to cut certain things, but it was just too long. As much as it was entertaining and good, it was still too long, you know? And so I think that's one of the hardest things for filmmakers is usually to look at their own stuff and to realize just constantly sit there and go, am I getting bored? Am I getting bored? Am I getting bored? And you got to watch your film in a lot of different ways, you know, watch it for color, watch it for sound, you know. But watching it just to get bored, I think, is almost a talent for certain people and certain filmmakers. It's crazy because if you're a filmmaker and you get bored easily, if you're just a person that gets bored easily, it usually will help you make films. Because your personal opinion is boring, so you'll move faster, you know. And in the world of ADD that we have, you moving things along and moving the camera, moving locations, having more interesting backgrounds, all that stuff makes things more interesting to watch. And so you got to think about that, you know.
But I thought that scene did not drag, so I don't know how much you cut out of the Russian roulette scene. But I thought it was. We also know Alex and love watching him, so it was great to see him there. But I felt that the scene, even had I not known him, was compelling. You know, because there was all this intensity and you didn't know what was going to happen. So.
It's a very long scene. We chop it up. I mean, that's one way that we broke it up a little bit, you know. When I felt like we were in that room too long, I think it's almost it might be a 9-minute scene. It's a long scene for a movie to be in one room. And thank you that you said it's good, but we did break it up. I think we use 4 minutes and then 5 minutes, something along those lines. I can't remember the exact numbers on it, but he killed it. And it's a scene that is high intensity and entertaining, and most people actually talk about that Russian roulette scene when they talk about the movie. They go, that iconic kind of scene. And that's why it was written. It was written, I wrote that scene for J.K. Simmons. I didn't write it for Alex. And J.K. couldn't do it, and so we brought Alex Soul in to kill it, and he did kill it.
How do you start writing a story? What's your process?
I think I start writing in my head before I ever put it on paper. You know, you get ideas, and I have so many ideas for movies in my phone. It usually comes with a regular concept, you know. This has never been done, or that's never been done. I think about, like, that story needs to be told, you know. I think that's what movies are, is like you're inspired to tell a story, somebody's point of view that's never been seen before, you know. That's a lot of movies. Me, I go more on the entertainment side of things, like, oh, that story should be told, but it's a sci-fi or whatever, because I feel like people would be entertained by it. So, I mean, different things motivate different people. I think it starts in my head, the writing process, and then eventually, a lot of people have writer's block, and I think that's because they think about writing instead of writing. I think once you know what the feel needs to be, what the story is, you should outline. You should have an idea of what the scenes are to create the whole story, how many scenes, all that stuff, and then go in and start writing. And when I say go in and start writing, you just got to sit down and you have to start typing. And what you write might not be good. You can always rewrite it. But it's the anxiety. People mostly don't write because they have anxiety about writing. They won't want to sit down still. You got to put that time aside and you got to just go do it. You have to sit down and you have to start writing. Bad or good, start writing.
Have you always been so disciplined? You seem very driven to me, like if you want something, there's no stopping it. You are going to try to achieve it. Sorry if that sounds too...
No, it definitely is.
I'm not
me.
selling a course, by the way.
It's me in a nutshell. It is me in a nutshell. Okay. I definitely, I can't force an outcome. That I can't do. I seem to have a lot of luck when it comes to me. I want to do this and just buckling down and doing it. I don't really talk too much about something when I know it's on my top 5 of my list to do. You know, but that's the thing. I will talk about certain things, but they're not on the top of my list of things to do. And so those are the only things I might talk about. But my next feature film, unless for some reason I die, that will get made. There's no question in my mind. There's not a 1% chance I won't make it. You know, we've already made 11 minutes of it. So I'm making 11 minutes of the next feature film and then handing it to my investors and maybe get some new investors to make the rest of the film. So I thought, well, let me show people what I can do and then see how many people will open their wallets to keep going with it. And if they don't, I'll find other people that do. So, but no, I've never had any problems buckling down and just doing the work. I think a lot of people think of obstacles that get in their way and like, oh, I need that before I do this. But it's like, I'm not afraid to fall on my face. Like, I'm not afraid to make something that's bad. Not to say I'm trying to, and not to say that I want to, but it's not a fear of mine. It's like, go, do the work, get it done, and it is what it is. People like it, and some people, no matter what you do, someone's gonna hate it. Someone's gonna love it, you know? So that's art, that's storytelling. So I've always been very goal-orientated and just go get it done. What are the steps to get there, you know? Bad Advice was a whole TV series that we shot. And I produced it, I directed it, all by myself. So, and I found all the locations myself. So if I was to look, I had a giant chalkboard with all the locations on it, 100 locations. I could have never, I mean, to look at that board, you would be so overwhelmed if you thought about getting all these locations. I literally went, what's the location I'm gonna find next? And that's all I'd focus on. So these bigger goals that you have to focus on little things at a time. Same thing with writing. You gotta focus on one scene or focus on what's the next scene that needs to be great, and then the next scene, and then know how that fits into the whole thing. But goal-orientatedly focus on one thing at a time. And if you're getting overwhelmed by looking at the whole piece, you have to look at one piece at a time and accomplish that thing to get done to the next thing.
So you would actually think of a situation and then write a scene around that? One of these dating situations that's in...
No, for Bad Advice, so Bad Advice has 4 storylines and they all tie in together. And then it needs to kind of like wrap up at the end in the sense that it ends bad for everybody comedically. Kind of like Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld. But the storylines need to affect each other. So that was the hardest part about writing for me, was the outline process. So I'd have all the storylines for every storyline I want to tell. And then say I'd only be able to fit so many on the chalkboard. And then I'd say, which ones can I connect? Because that was the key part of the writing for me that I thought made the scripts good, was finding, oh, that storyline could affect this storyline and turn out in a comedic moment, you know. So that's what I felt was my positive part of the show, or positive part of what I'm adding to comedically make it work. And so, yeah, just focusing on one storyline at a time. Once I knew how the storylines connected, I would just sit down and write. And I didn't know everything in between. I'd kind of let my imagination go. And then sometimes it was bad and I deleted it, you know. But ultimately, if I thought it was funny and I thought it worked within the structure of, you know, since I already have the outline done, I know the beginning and I know the end, and then I have to fill in the middle, basically, with the writing process. So that's kind of how I did it.
And do you think because you're not afraid to write something bad, you said, or that to fail or whatever it is, that you don't have writer's block because you're just like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I'm going to rewrite it. I'll be okay with that. I'm not invested in, it has to be perfect, I'm this writer and...
I think the reason I know that is because I've been on the other side of it. I have had anxiety about writing and haven't written. But I've kind of learned, it's kind of like, so I'd never written 10 pages a day before Bad Advice. I wrote 10 pages a day on Bad Advice, the TV series that's out there, by doing it. And then once I wrote 10 pages in a day, I was like, well, I can do that again. I've already done it once. You know, so you build confidence. Like if you've done it, now you've done it. So you know you can do it. So do it again. You know, so it's baby steps in that way. Now when I have any anxiety about writing, I'm thinking about it. I'm not doing it. And I've learned that in myself. So I speak about it only because I've learned about it in myself and I've made those mistakes. If I didn't make them, I probably wouldn't know it. But when I sat back and analyzed it, it was like, I'm not actually having anxiety about writing. I'm having anxiety about thinking about writing. Sit down, start doing the process, you know. And that's probably the same, I would think, with filmmaking, with everything. You know, you're going to learn more by doing. If you have a lot of anxiety doing it, just start doing it. And realize it might be trash if you just start, but at least you're learning, so.
When you're writing characters, are you just mainly thinking about their dialogue?
I'm a very dialogue-heavy writer when it comes, at least to Bad Advice for sure, because it's comedy. A lot of things have been comedy in the past, so very, very much thinking about dialogue. Yeah, when you look at my scripts, they're not very descriptive, a lot of them. I think the next feature I'm doing, which is an action drama, I have pages of description, which is totally different, but I'm describing every movement in an action scene, you know, and nobody's talking. And so I got to describe and kind of paint a picture. And my brother's helped me write that, so it's more descriptive because he's better at that stuff than me. I know what I want. I know it's in my head, but then I have to describe it to him and then he can put it on the page more. And I've just learned that he's better at that than me, and so I accept that and I take his help. But the dialogue, I've always been very much a dialogue writer in a lot of ways. And I think if you know your characters, you know what they would say and what they wouldn't say. And you just, the more you backstory your character, the more you know about your character, the more you know what's going to come out of their mouth, I think. Whether that's in drama or in comedy. I think with Bad Advice, I leaned more in on the comedy. So it was like, I would always lean on Dallas, Ronald Quigley's character, for the comedic element. There were certain times when a scene wasn't working and I was like, well, what can Dallas say to make this funny? Or what point of view he can have that's ridiculous that would make this funny? Because he's kind of the wacky, out of the box character. So I knew he could always bring the comedy. And he's the only person I wrote the role for, the role of Dallas. So I could really imagine him delivering it. As to where the other characters, you have Dallas, who's the landlord, who's like the wacky, out of the, you know, the wacky off the wall character. And then you have Greg, who's an insecure kind of like mess. And then you have Jordan, who's the straight guy, who's kind of just kind of along. He's kind of the audience's point of view. And then Brad is the total, you know, he's Ashton Kutcher in that 70s show. He's a mimbo, you know, he's a total dumbass. So I knew the characters when writing it. And sometimes the scenes would become funny with other characters, but I will say I definitely heavily leaned on Dallas's character to bring it back, just because I always found kind of the off the wall, like Kramer character in Seinfeld, so entertaining. So I always kind of brought that back around to make the scene entertaining, and always lend. And I knew, the more I wrote it, the more I knew each character's voice and what they would say. And you get better and better with that, you know, as the scripts would come along.
And it seems like similar in Wally Got Wasted, especially, forgive me on the character's name, but with the long blonde hair. He was always very distinct in his dialogue.
His name was Jerry, and Aaron Groban played him. Yes, you know, I didn't fully write Wally Got Wasted. Seth Himes, my partner, wrote the script, and I kind of told him what to write. So we teamed up on that. But so two different people wrote the dialogue to those things. But it's funny how they probably do have similar things. But yeah, no, he was definitely a dumb character in that. And I've been sticking to that a lot, I guess, in the sense of like my two projects have mirrored similar characters in a way. But comedy, it's because comedy has the same characters in a lot of ways, though. You know, I might not be doing anything original in the sense of comedy. I mean, there's so many comedic teams out there that have been so good in the past that you can watch something and that might inspire you to kind of change it, but still it's something that somebody did in the past in a way. I mean, and sometimes I'm doing things maybe that are similar to something else and I don't even know it, you know? I mean, it's not like anything in my script is something that I saw somewhere else. Not consciously, but maybe unconsciously it is, you know? Because where did I learn humor from? Where did I learn comedy from? You know, you learned it from Three Stooges, or, you know, the things that you grew up watching, which for me, Seinfeld, Curb, I've seen every episode. And so people say Bad Advice is similar to Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld. I hear that all the time. It's because that's what inspired me to write this, you know. It's in the same vein of that humor. And so that people recognize that makes me feel good, because that's what I wanted in the writing, is to make it feel similar to that. And now Curb Your Enthusiasm is over, so hopefully we can fill some of the gap of people wanting to watch stuff like that, for bad advice, you know.
What do you think of the saying, never start writing until you know the ending?
I think it's a good rule for a lot of people. I think sometimes people don't write because of stuff like that, though, and I think that's not a good answer. I think there's savants out there. I don't think Stephen King knows his endings. I think there is people out there that can break that rule for sure. And some people, if they know the ending, somehow it stops them from getting creative in the beginning, so that also can get in the way of certain people. But you got to know the story. You got to know the story you're telling for the most part, usually. But if you're writing just to write, I mean, you know, go ahead, go for it. See how it turns out. There's no harm in it. But if you give it to 10 people and none of them like it, you might want to try to figure out a more steady path to what your story is. You know, so knowing the ending is a big part of a movie. I mean, that's what they're going to end on, so it should be a good part, whatever that is. And it's going to determine the whole tone of the whole thing, you know. I just watched Axel Foley, the Eddie Murphy movie on Netflix, and it's like the ending was a happy-go-lucky movie, you know, and I think they knew their ending the moment they decided to make that movie. They knew it was going to be a happy, everybody kicks ass kind of movie. And if everybody dies in the end, it's a totally different kind of movie. So, you know, like Titanic, you know, so you gotta know your ending. If you know your ending, it's gonna be a much better journey for you. I think it would be an easier journey to write it if you know your ending. But like I said, it just depends what kind of writer you are. Some people, they're really, really good at just sitting down and creating a story and putting themselves in that lead character's position and going, well, what would happen here? What would happen? What would I do here? What would I do there? And what would make this more interesting? Oh, maybe if this happened or that. So there's no exact science to it, you know. And I wasn't sitting there near all these filmmakers that when they wrote it, you know, there's tons of amazing movies out there and we don't really know what the writer did to get those amazing stories. So I don't think there's one right answer to do it.
You'd mentioned previously that until we give it to 10 people, theoretically, and they tell us yes or no, do you think we think we're a savant until we go to those 10 people and then the world shows us, you know what, actually we didn't understand this part here. It's not that it's not good, it's just, you know, how is that to continually get feedback and realize, okay, maybe I'm not one of the chosen ones and I really do have to hunker down and...
Gosh, you're talking about ego at that point.
Or skill, too?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think in any field in life, if you have people telling you that you're good at it, you generally keep going in that direction. I think it's a very fine line. There's very few people that you say you're horrible at it and they try harder. Now, there are those exceptions out there. It just depends how you're built. 1 in 1,000, you know. You tell them they stink and they go, F you, I'm going and kicking ass and I'm going to prove you wrong. Most people aren't like that, you know. Some people are and some people get that and it serves them very well. But a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. Oh, this isn't so good. And oh, wait, it's not so good. This is not something I hear all the time. What are you talking about? So, and it also depends on what stage you're at. You know, if you're just starting out in film and you've never made a feature, like take it easy on yourself. You know, take in the criticism. Try to learn from it. You know, I think so many people are so hard on themselves and they think like their first feature or first short film is going to change their career. Like, be in that learning position, you know. But I think being in that learning position, I think is the hardest thing is to keep making stuff. You know, if you can pump out 10 short films in a year, you're going to be really good at making short films the next year, you know, especially if you're taking criticism. But I think you ultimately, to do this, to do any art form, you're going to have ego attached to it. And you need to massage the ego enough to drive you forward and at the same time not have too much ego to take in criticism to make you better.
Well, I mean, it takes some ego to want to put things out there, whatever it is, in whatever form. And so in some sense, ego gets a bad rap Because I think without ego, then you're just this little mouse and you won't do anything. So, I think you need to spread the feathers and
I think
walk that catwalk.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a good thing to have an ego, and it's a good thing to keep yourself in check at the same time. But everybody thinks they're special in a way. Every human being that has any confidence thinks they're special in a way. There's nothing wrong with that. Most people that are good at something realize that it takes a lot of work to be good at it. And they realize they're special, but it doesn't come without effort. And the more effort you put into it, usually the better result you get, the more praise you get, and all that kind of stuff. So having an ego is a good thing. But when you're at the top, can you still learn? That's what it comes to my mind when I think about ego, is sometimes you hear horror stories on set of this person's nasty or that person's nasty. And it's really funny because these people got so lucky to be there, and there's definitely luck involved in like almost every case. Like there's very few people that have so much gravitas or so much talent that they're just undeniable. It's usually you met the right person or you got lucky with this or that. So to be in those positions, they're so lucky to begin with. And I always think if I ever got in a position, just to hopefully stay as humble as possible, because you're lucky to be there. But a lot of people that get to the top, they want to do something else, or they want to do whatever. And I'm like, you've already won the lottery. Like, do what so many people want to do, act in that big movie or direct big movies, You have an opportunity, take advantage of it and feel good about it,
Well, it can also be maybe a gilded cage in some ways. If you're at a certain level, I mean, not that I would know, but you just see certain people aren't able to really do other things. Maybe they can, but their career would be highly criticized. So in a sense, it's a gilded cage. They're kind of trapped.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's human journey in life is different. What is making you happy is a huge part of that. And who you're surrounded with is a huge part of that. Some of the people that you see that have 20-year careers and stuff, I think a lot of that has to do with the friends they surround themselves with, the family they surround themselves, the support system. Because if you get too much into the glitz and glamour and all that kind of stuff, it can erase who you are in a way. You don't remember what grounds you as a human being. So, you gotta kind of build that up too as you're building your career, building your knowledge, building everything, and building your nest, that makes you strong, makes you know who you are, and, keeps you grounded and focused. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just watching this young YouTuber, and he said, and forgive me on the name, I'll try to put it in the below line section, but he used the example of Pearl, the movie Pearl, and her desire to want to be famous and not having a support system, and he compared it to Marilyn Monroe. And then those that did have a strong family, and how when things are going great, who cares, but when they're really bad, that's when you really need that support system.
Well, making movies, the entertainment industry is a crazy industry. Music and movies are both crazy in the sense that there's so many people trying to make money off of art, which is such a weird thing because you make art. The real reason somebody makes art is never really because of money. I mean, the people that are inspired to do it are inspired for another reason. I can't imagine anyone that ever made an amazing movie like Titanic. He didn't make it going, man, we're going to make $1 billion. I really want to tell this story to make $1 billion. No, he had a story in his heart. He wanted to tell it and he did it. And it just turned into that. But then you have all these people below and around him that want to make money. And so to keep him working, healthy or not healthy, they want to keep him working. So it's a really weird industry in that way. There's tons of leeches in a way. People, I can't say leeches, people that want to survive off of your talent if you're really talented. So, and that might help you. I mean, I'm not saying all of them are bad, but they might not have your mental health the top on their priority list. And so you better do that for yourself.
As an actor and director, you've seen hundreds of auditions. What advice do you have for actors?
Make a choice, number one. You probably have a good idea with what you think the character should be like. Make that choice and make it strong and just go for it. if they don't like what you did, at least you go home knowing that you did what you wanted to do at least. Now, obviously you want to try to give the director what they want, but if it doesn't suit to your strengths, like you definitely got to, hopefully you know your strengths as an actor. So you should be playing to your strengths, but making a choice that's out of the norm is going to make you stand out in an audition anyway. And even if you're not getting that part, I might remember you for something else. And there's lots of people that have auditioned for one role and I end up casting them in another. So be good. Number one rule, be strong in your choices. And if you're doing an audition as an actor, be strong in your choices and be committed to what you want to achieve in the audition.
When you say stand out, is that sort of taking it in this like new direction that's never been done? How do you know when you're not actually following the advice of what they want or what they see the character as?
I don't think you know. You definitely don't know nowadays because you're doing a video at home. So you don't know if you're doing what they want or not. You usually don't get feedback. Occasionally you get a call back and they're like, do it more like this or like that. So that happens. But on the first read through, there's sometimes notes that on the audition that say like this or like that. So you do have that sometimes. Being out of the box is just, it's funny, the more you act something, the more you find beats in it that are awkward, or you find, oh, this works. I can get a laugh there if I pause for 3 seconds or act confused. Like if I say all the words like I'm confused, it's a totally different feel than if I say it confidently. So there's all these things that you learn, and the more you go through it, the more you learn, the more you try out things. You can't be afraid to fail as an actor. A film is made in editing. So if an actor shows up and gives me 10 different ways to do it, I can make the decision in editing. Now, I don't want 10 different characters, but 10 different decisions on how certain lines are read or whatever. Their job is to give me variety, really. Not variety on character, but variety on the reads, and to explore, what if the character thought this, and would he say it this way instead of that way? Like, that's what this is, that's the fun part about it. As a director and actor collaborating, it's my job as a director to craft your performance to be better in the story and better for the character. But if you don't trust me as a director and you're acting for me, you're going to stick to what you practice and what and what you think is good. The best actors that keep coming back for me are the ones that take chances and they realize that I'm meticulous at editing. I watch every single take. I even watch when the take's not action. So if you give me something hypothetically off camera or off the take, looking in the right eye line, I might use it. If it works. If you give me some kind of weird look or something that I'm just like, oh, I could use that. I watch every second of film. So you got to trust your director in that way as an actor and try new things. It's very important.
What advice do you have for directors going through the audition process?
Oh, man. Hopefully they know what they want. It's funny, I saw, sometimes you see these lines around the block, and I just have to think they're just not professional at all. Because occasionally they do in-person interviews, and they used to do them a lot more back in the day, but if the line's around the block, what are you doing? Do you know what you want? I'm seeing every ethnicity, I'm seeing that's fine, but do you have some idea what you want? Don't waste people's time. So I think knowing what you want as a director is key. I think being open-minded to see somebody do something, and if it's not what you thought, still consider it, I think would be a good thing. Because even if, the crazy part is somebody can nail this part of the scene and not nail the second part of the scene, right? And then the next person you watch nails the second part of the scene, but doesn't nail the first part of the scene. So what do you do there? You got to make a choice, but you also can help one of those people make the decisions that the other person made. As a director, you can kind of steal choices that actors have made in the audition if they're not necessarily the right for that part, because it all comes down to choices. And even as a writer, writing my own stuff and being the director and watching new people try my stuff, sometimes people can make things funny where I never intended to be funny, and I'm learning from the actor watching the audition because they made it funny in this one spot that, oh, well, that's pretty funny. Maybe I can have the next person do that if I don't cast that person, you know. Sometimes people are extremely talented and they don't have the right look of what you wanted, you know. It's a huge part of it, and it sucks for actors because you can kill something. They wanted a guy that had a longer face, or they wanted a guy that looked more like a biker. You don't look like a biker. You're now trying to look like a biker, but you don't look like a biker, you know. And that's a huge part of it, you know, playing dress up. So, and if they believe you're that person, you usually get the part.
How many actors are in your TV show Bad Advice?
We casted about 100 actors in the show. I ran out of actors. It was crazy. I cast out of my phone, and that's why when I meet actors, I always tell them, well, let me get your number, you know, and I put in my phone their name and then actor right next to it because I typed in actor during the show, and then all the actors come up, and I ran out of actors, friends, you know, people that I knew that were actors. And we have some social media stars in there and that kind of stuff. But I literally was like, oh man, I need somebody to do this line. And the way that shooting went was I'd get a location first and I knew I had to go there. You know, you got to move. If someone's going to let you come into the location for free and they're going to let you take over their house or their business, you better move. So it's like, hey, next Wednesday, does that work? You know, and then I had to find the actors. Now, my leads are all cast for the most part. But there's always those smaller roles, and they're very important. If you get somebody that stinks, you might have to do 60 takes, you know? So finding somebody who's a working actor or somebody that's good is a huge part of all that, you know? So, you know, and we got lucky too. We had names in the show. We had Larry Hankin in the show and Ken Davidian, who was in Bull Rat. And if people don't know Larry Hankin, he was the evil Kramer in Seinfeld. He was the guy that lives upstairs in Friends, and he was even in Escape from Alcatraz back in the day. Ken Davidian was from Bull Rat. Brad Cronenberg was in Curb Your Enthusiasm and a lot of Adam Sandler movies. And casting with that, I get lucky because it's just people that I meet along the way, and you know, you connect with them and you try to stay in touch, and I hope you can work together, and you always ask and they say yes or they no. You just get lucky, you know. So
did you initially audition those actors? I know you said you had them in your phone and you knew them and you continued to use them, but
so Bad Advice I did not do any auditions on. So it's well, that's not true. I'm sorry, that's not true at all. We did do an Actors Access casting. I didn't end up casting anybody. I ended up casting very little people from auditions in the show, and that's because there's so many characters, you know, and it's very hard to tell if somebody's good in an audition. It just is, you know, in a video they send out. Then I have to meet them, you know. First off, I got to think they're right for the role. Then I have to meet them, and you know, if they're a woman, which is a lot of attractive women in Bad Advice, they're immediately thinking, well, why are we meeting? You know, it's literally to make sure that you're not crazy. I'm going to bring you on a movie set. But, you know, that's always a question for women, and I understand why. But I have to meet you. So the audition's one part, then I have to meet you. Then I'd like to rehearse a little bit to see if you got it, you know, because you had it in the tape, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have it when people are watching. Like, auditioning is a whole different kind of skill. You know, you might get an audition tape and they're phenomenal, but then you get them on set and you have 20, 30 people standing around, they might totally choke. And that's why experience is such a huge part of acting. And, you know, so casting 100 actors was crazy, you know, it was a crazy thing. And a lot of it, because we shot it over 5 to 6 months, I was casting in groups, you know, casting per episode or casting per day. And you know, you get lucky with the names that we have in the show because I just knew that I wanted to use them. And so like Larry Hankin, I basically was like, what role do you want to play? And he was like, I said, I have this role, I have that role. He said, I want to play the homeless guy. And so I was like, done, you know, whatever he wants. You get a certain caliber of actor, you know they're going to be good. So as long as they like the role, they're going to bring something in that's going to be solid. So I don't need to audition names for the most part, especially if it's not the lead role. Now, if you have a lead role in a movie, it's such a huge thing that somebody could be extremely talented, but they're not bringing the essence of what you want for the character. So you might want to read a name at that point, if you can read a name. But on smaller roles, you really can just hire somebody who's phenomenal. You don't have to read them, in my opinion. But, you know, it just depends how important that role is and how much you see that role being a pivotal part of your movie being a certain way, you know. I mean, if you casted some big name in a role that's 10 minutes in your movie, chances are they're going to do a good job and you'll be all right, especially if they're a great actor. So,
do you ever want to do a chemistry test, though, to make sure they may be great on their own? Will they work well in the scene with these other actors?
I think it comes down to money, for starters. You know, I think that you would love to read everybody, but it takes time and it takes effort and it takes money. If you're getting a name to be in your thing and you're independent, you're lucky to get somebody in your thing. You're pressing your luck asking them to audition. So I don't press my luck with that stuff. You know, if someone's nice enough to come out for me and they have a well-established career, I better know that they're going to work, or what am I asking them for, in a way. And if I ask them to read, hey, you can get it sometimes, you know. And there's a part of me that wants to, I'm not going to lie. Like, you definitely want to see a chemistry read. You want to see these certain things. If they're your lead in the movie, you should, you know. Or at least, if you're clever enough, don't call it an audition. Call it a read-through. Call it something else. Get them, see them do the part. You might have problems if they're not the right person, but you were going to have problems anyway. So you might as well take that step, but do it in a way that doesn't seem like you're testing them. You know, if they're not the right person for the role, you're probably going to offend them. But at the same time, if you know they're not the right person, or what they're bringing to it's not the right thing. And hopefully if you have it like on a rehearsal or something like that, you're giving them notes and seeing how they're changing. Can it work? Can it not work? And so, yeah, I think it's a certain knack to maybe trying a screen test. If you're asking somebody who's literally above where you are or is very, very talented. Ego always comes in, so, you know.
Even though you're an actor, were you ever scared to work with actors? Did they ever intimidate you?
I'm not intimidated by other actors. I actually look at it like a professional sport. I'm like, the better they do, I think it makes me better. And so it's kind of like, let's go. We're gonna play, let's play. I want to dive in with them and go to the next level. I think with WALLY Got Wasted, that was like the when he dies and all the blood's shooting out, like Patrick took it to a 10 and I took it to a 10 and it was just going at it. We only had one take for that, by the way. So when WALLY Got Wasted, somebody dies and gets stabbed and he pulls the knife out and all the blood shot everywhere. We were only going to get one take of it because the blood went all over us and all over, you know, WALLY and everything else. So I kind of knew we were probably going to have to do this in a one, or we're going to have to do this in one take. And so I was like, we got to turn it on. You know, you got to make your choices ahead of time what you're going to do. Now, Patrick took it to a 10. So I had an option to, there's two options, I think, as an actor. You're going to take it below and you're going to underplay things, or you're going to take it to a 10 with him. I decided to take it to a 10. It might have been funnier if I brought it low and was like, everything's going to be fine. We're all going to be okay. And he was freaking out. That's usually a better dynamic on screen, but it's not the direction I went with it. So you got to live with what you get. So, but no, I'm never scared. I love phenomenal actors. They make you look better. And the better ones you get around you, the better you're going to be. So.
As a director, what is your approach or philosophy to building a scene?
Depends on what stage I'm in, you know. If we're there, we're on set, and I have two actors building the scene, I'd like to try to do rehearsals beforehand. So you could be in the rehearsal stage. At that point, I want to try to free people up to try new things, to learn, to be open, as long as they come prepared. I think on set, there still has to be that element of freedom. But at the same time, sometimes a scene isn't working, you know, and at that point it comes down to budget and time to fix it, because if it's not working, you don't want to keep it. So, you know, I heard on Sicario, the last scene, that they shut down the whole set for 3 hours and redid the scene, rewrote the scene on set. And they just kept doing improvisations with the 2 lead actors to make it work. That's a luxury that a lot of people don't have. But you gotta have that sense of freedom. And they sense, like the director, the buck stops with you. If the scene's not working, you have to fix it. So you have to figure out something, whether it's taking the chains off your actors to improv and then go, oh, I like that, stick with that line, or stick with this. But it's ultimately, you got to have, first looking at them, making sure you believe what they're saying, okay? If that works, then you're good. What's the point of the scene? What are they trying to convey? It might be amazingly acted, but then I want sympathy for your character right here. Can you do it more hurt, you know? And the communicating with actors, the simpler you can make it for them, the better for them, you know. If you have a long explanation of what you want, you might confuse them, especially on set, because they're kind of trying to comprehend what you're saying and deliver it. So if you can say simple words like, do it more cheery, simple note, but definitely easy to achieve and understand for an actor. So I think that's really what it comes down to, is communication and openness to fix problems and come at a scene with that, you know. And, you know, with WALLY Got Wasted, we blocked it. So WALLY Got Wasted, I always have blocking in my head, but my DP wanted to see the scene acted. So he didn't want to restrict the actors in their blocking. Let them do whatever they're going to do, and then I know where to light and have them hit their marks. That's how he wanted to do it. I always told him, well, I'll have them land here, you know, and he wanted to see them do it. But then I have to, as a director, tell the actor, I want you to land here or there. And then he would see it, and then he would light according to where they would fall within the room to make sure the lighting was good. So there's different elements to laying out a scene. That's why I'm saying that.
At what point do you allow actors to improv? Is it when you see that the scene's just not working the way you've written it? Then you're like, you know what? Hey guys, can we just loosen it up here and you guys just try what you think?
No, I don't. I don't generally let people just improv off the cuff. I think certain people are really generally amazingly talented with that stuff. I haven't worked with that many. I've worked with some, but not many that are so amazing at improvisation that I just let them run loose, you know. The problem with improvisation is if you have an actor that's not great across from you acting with you with the improvisation, the scene's gonna stink. You need 2 people to be good at that, for that to happen. You know, it's funny, in WALLY Got Wasted, me and Patrick, who was the other lead in WALLY Got Wasted, we were good at improvisation. We'd go back and forth, and I think we got better as the filming went along with bickering, and it kind of made the movie better. And I honestly think we could have even got better if we would have explored it more. I think that's what actually made the movie work, was us bickering in a fun way. But Aaron Groban, who played Jerry, was not an improver at all. So if you're improving with someone who's not going to improv back, he's going to stick to the lines. Now you're off in Never Neverland. It's the same as in a play. If somebody goes off script, the whole play's going, oh, what's going to happen? And you got to improv to get back on track in the play to make it work, or, you know, or then you're lost. So, but to add to that, I always try to give my actors a take for themselves. It's pretty much generally something I always do. I get what I want, and then I let them, I say, I'm going to do another take just for you. Do whatever you want. They can do anything they want, as long as we get it in focus and in frame. And I usually always do that. And I usually do that a lot, especially if an actor's, I want to take it in this direction, but I know exactly where I want it to go. I'll be like, I'll give you your take. I'll give you your take. Don't worry, you'll get your take. So you get a chance to do that. Just do what I'm asking you to do right now. And, you know, the improvisation gets used 30% of the time, maybe even 50. I'm on the higher end if it's funny. You know, I'm not against using it at all. but at the same time, some people are very much in their lane, thinking about this is funny or this I want to do, but they're not thinking the whole picture. And that's my job. So at the end of the day, I'm not afraid of getting it. We don't have film. We're shooting on high def. So you can do another take and give them another take. As long as you've organized enough to have enough time to give them that take, you should give them that take. It might make your film better, you know. And I would hope that every time I try to free them and say, do whatever you want, I hope that they go off script. I hope that they get the gist of what I need you to say, but go somewhere, you know. And they're not always ready for that, but some people are. Some people are amazing at improvisation. So.
What is your favorite scene in Bad Advice?
My favorite scene in Bad Advice, gosh, there's so many scenes. That's a hard one to answer. A lot of people love the opening scene, which is my character Jordan brings a girl back, and we end up starting to have sex basically, and I accidentally FaceTime my parents during the sex, and they can't really tell what they're looking at because it's so close, and they think like I might be wounded, and so my dad calls my mom, and then they realize it comes into focus, and they realize what they're seeing is sex, and you know, it's a total debacle. I've had some good positive feedback on that, but it is the opening to the show, so a lot of people, probably the most people, have seen that out of everything. But my favorite scene, gosh, there's a lot of them. There is a lot of them. I think maybe something, episode 7. Episode 7 has Dallas's character, Ronald Quigley's character. He points out the fact that nobody needs to learn anything nowadays. They just learn it on YouTube. So I came up with what's the most ridiculous thing somebody could think they learned off of YouTube, and I thought, well, be an electrician. You shouldn't be playing around with electricity. So he encourages Brad's character to become an electrician. Just, you don't need to learn anything. Like, nobody nowadays learns anything, right? Everybody thinks they're professional because they watch some videos online. So we're making fun of that. I think that storyline is really fun. And he goes to somebody's house and acts like he's an electrician. And starts a business, you know, and Dallas's character says, well, you don't need to learn it, just go there and then look up the video on YouTube on how to do it. And so he does that, and it doesn't go well at all, obviously. So there's just certain things you definitely should learn, you know, not just watch videos online. So I like that storyline a lot.
And maybe this is a bit inappropriate, but I'll ask it anyway. Was the opening scene based on true to life stories, a friend's situation?
No.
Oh, good.
Actually,
okay.
it was. So I wrote the pilot, and it actually wasn't in the pilot, the first scene, and I had Cassie on board, the girl that played the girl, and she's an OnlyFans girl. Like, she's big in the OnlyFans world, and she has a lot of fans, like 1 million fans or something. And so, because of advertising, I kind of opened it up to social media stars and that kind of stuff. And so it kind of came from that. It came from like trying to think. So the opening of the show, the scene after that is people sitting on a couch. And I was like, I can't open the show to give people the tone of the show with people sitting on the couch. I might bore them. So again, it goes back to trying to entertain people. And I thought, let's hit them with something hard that'll get them laughing. And I thought, what's the funniest thing I can come up with? And I thought, well, it'd be funny if somebody was having sex and accidentally FaceTimed their parents. So that's where it came from. I was like literally just walking and I came up with it. And then I asked her and she was totally down to do it because, you know, asking any woman to do a simulated sex scene with you is with me, I'm the director, it's always a little hairy. So, but she didn't hesitate. She was totally like, oh, it sounds hilarious and I'd love to do it. So we totally did it. But doing those scenes are hard, you know. Filming a simulated sex scene is hard. Like, for one, like, you know, I'm the director, so if we're filming us half naked, people are standing around watching us. It's already slightly awkward. And if I don't get excited, she might be offended. If I do get excited, she might be offended. So there's that element of it. So I apologize either way. But yeah, it's always, and this show has a lot of sex scenes in it. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of simulated sex, but a lot of sexual situations. And there's a lot of beautiful women that I had to ask, hey, can you do this or do that? And they got to trust you. But I always had, I think they could always tell my intentions were to make people laugh and to make a good show and nothing else past that. And if you have any gray or area around that, then you're going to probably run into trouble, I would think.
Did you get any notes to tone down the sexual humor or ramp it up? Maybe needed more?
I didn't get any notes from that. I think the show has a lot of sexual content, but no nudity and no cursing, actually. There's a little bit of cursing in the credits for the bloopers, because every episode ends with bloopers, and I think a lot of people seem to really love the bloopers. But no, I didn't get any notes on, I think it might turn some people off, but it might turn some people on, you know what I'm saying? So right now we have a production company out of Pittsburgh that's talking about paying for the second season. And they really love it. And one of the things they mentioned was, we love that it's at the beach and there's so many beautiful women, and it's just a good time. They were like, I laughed. I felt like I was, watching warm weather. It made me feel the beach, and I saw beautiful women, and it was nothing but positivity. And that's even the color correction we wanted to make bright and kind of warm and inviting. And it seemed like, at least them, who was talking about paying for season 2, that they thought the same thing that I was thinking when I made it. And it's funny because, so our lead characters are surfers. I had so much talking on the couch in the show, and then I realized I wanted to make it a beach show. So every scene that I could move from the couches to the beach, I did. And so afterwards, so many scenes are them walking with surfboards talking, because I was literally like, let's move it from the couch to the beach, from the apartment to the beach, get it outside, get it sunny, where we can shoot at magic hour and it'll look amazing with no lights, That's what you have to do. You get it 1 hour of shooting, go and shoot it. So, that's all part of the tricks. So,
do you think that adult situations are more acceptable than curse words when it comes to ratings or just who your audience is?
It's amazing how much that's changed a lot. Like, you watch normal TV shows sometimes and you see, like, you see a lot more naked frontal men nowadays. I think sexuality is way more in people's faces. It's all over social media. So as much as maybe somebody might make it a big deal on television, you can't get away from it. So I think it's more accepted, I do. I think for WALLY Got Wasted, they're cursing a lot. I let people drop the F-bomb as much as they wanted, and I did not stop them. And a lot of those weren't even in the script. Like, people would throw an improv in, but the only improv was the F word, So I kind of learned with that certain countries didn't want all the cursing. And so I decided on the show we would have no cursing and we would have no nudity, because it didn't seem to help. And I thought it actually, WALLY Got Wasted is about 3 guys that accidentally kill somebody and they're trying to get rid of the body. It's very much a kickback to Weekend at Bernie's and Hangover. And when I really thought about it after making the movie, I was like, my audience was probably 13-year-old boys. And I totally cut them out because of all those F-bombs. I probably missed out on my whole audience that would have made it a cult classic, because it's way more probably funnier to a 12-year-old who never seen Weekend at Bernie's or any of these things. And it was a kickback to them, but it was a kickback to an 80s comedy movie. But it seemed to only hurt me to put the cursing in, and so I decided not to do it this time.
We talked about your favorite scene in Bad Advice. How did you direct that scene?
I think my favorite scene would really be, there's a scene, so in episode 3, I think you were just watching, episode 3, my character is trying to have sex with a woman, and she won't have sex with him unless he gets tested. So then he talks about getting tested with his friends, and it turns out none of them have been tested for diseases either. So he decides he's going to take everybody to the clinic to get tested for diseases. And Greg's character meets a girl at the clinic, and he's like, I met a girl, I'm like in love. And my character's like, you met a girl at the clinic? Like, she probably has herpes, you need to like throw that number out. And so he's heartbroken. He's like, oh my God, no, that she's so beautiful, I need to find out if she's clean. And Dallas's character, which is the wacky neighbor, said he was there with us. We're all there. He's like, I'll find out if she's clean, don't worry. And he goes and he dresses up like a doctor. He like sneaks into the back room, steals a doctor's gown, and starts walking around to each room in the clinic and going into the rooms to try to find this girl, that he can look at her chart and see if she has any diseases. So that sets up this one scene. He walks in, and each room he walks in, these people are looking for a diagnosis. They're like, is anything wrong with me, doc? And he walks in this one room, and this guy clearly has something wrong with his thing, and Dallas's reaction, and it's just, I die laughing thinking about it. And I died laughing while we shot it. It's just an idea of somebody going into a room who's not a doctor, looking at your junk and then giving you advice about it. And him, that wacky character, was just such a funny thing to watch. And I laughed my butt off directing it. I just couldn't stop laughing. It was many, many takes of me ruining it, perhaps, because I was laughing off camera. That doesn't happen that often, but that one definitely did. And I'm very proud of that scene. I think I still laugh at when I watch that scene. Just all the reactions. It's the idea of a doctor looking at your thing and there's something wrong with it, him going, oh my God, it's just very funny to me.
Sure.
So it's the last thing you'd want to hear from a doctor.
How many companies did you shop around Bad Advice 2, your TV show?
There was different stages of it. So I wrote the show quickly. We shot it in 2021. I pretty much was finished shooting in 2021. In 2022, I edited, and then 2023, I shopped. The whole year was dedicated towards trying to get it on television, and gosh, I didn't have an exact line. I think that's one of the hardest parts. The hardest parts for people is generally finding money for a film, and then what the heck do I do when I make it? As much as the filmmaking is hard, it's those two elements that are really the hardest for people and discouraging, because artists can live in that middle area so well. But I ended up, first one guy was going to shop it and then shared it around, and then that didn't work out. And then another person was, and we ended up getting an agent at Gersh, the head of Gersh, to shop it around. And he shared it with, I think, 3 or 4 companies. And then the strike happened, sadly. And so that kind of ruined our trajectory with the show and the agent, because he probably felt like, well, my writers are striking, I'm not going to help a new show replace writers. So there's a whole dynamic going on there. So he didn't shop it anymore once the strike happened. And I was thinking the strike was going to help us, and I found out the strike did not help us. It really hurt us, because nobody wanted to touch anything. And gosh, the strike lasted a long time. So then I wasn't going to sit there and wait for Gersh thing to come back, nor do I know if he's even going to come back, The communication got very little, because I think he didn't want to get anywhere near anything that would make his clients mad at him, probably. I don't fully know, but that was pretty much done. So then I had to look for another way to get it on platforms and stuff like that. And I always knew I could go to Tubi, because we had that connection to get things on Tubi. And I just kept trying, and ultimately I ended up coming back to the connections I already had, which is, let's go get it on Tubi and Pluto and Shine TV and some of these other platforms. I went with the connections I knew to shop the show, but it's also meeting new people. I literally just dedicated my time to shopping it. So it was like, I'd go to every industry party I could. I'd talk to everybody about it. Anybody, and really trying to get to know new people, because I clearly didn't know the right people to get it on television. And that's a really hard thing to do. I thought, because we never had, you don't have a lot of people making a whole first season of a TV series. I made a whole first season of a TV series independently. So I thought, if I have this whole season, I could get it on television. Like, people can see what we did and know that it's good and get it on there. And man, that circle is so tightly niched. They want things they make themselves. They don't want your thing. So it was discouraging for me. It might not be the same story for somebody else. I don't know if they just didn't like my show, or the strike happened and that was a huge part of it. But also the people that did see it, 5 or 6 of them came back and said, we need names, which was extremely discouraging. You know, it was literally like, even Roku was like, we really love the show, but we wish one of your leads was a name. You know, it's like, well, they're not names, but you know, it's cheaper. You know, let's give it a shot with an audience. But no, they didn't see it that way. So, and then sometimes you don't get a whole lot of answers on why they think it might not be right for them. And so you're sitting there guessing in a way. You know, they say, a lot of them said it was great, but no names. I mean, that was the one common thing that I would hear them say, is that they wanted names. And as much as the show has Larry Hankin and Ken Davidian, and they're recognizable faces from Borat and Seinfeld, they're not the names these people are thinking of, or they didn't watch enough to see those people. I don't know. They're not the leads, and I think that's what they wanted, names as leads, which takes money. So it's a whole other problem. But
So would you get meetings with any of these people, or no, because you already went with kind of who you knew through avenues, you didn't really need to get meetings, it was just emails?
it's not emails. You don't meet a lot of people in those positions in Hollywood from people introducing you. It's not how it works. People hold on to their connections so tightly because that's value for them. And there's so many middle people that make their career on being a middle person. So they don't give you, sadly, their connect. They don't go, oh, hey, go pitch Fox. I know a guy at Fox, go pitch him, or go show him the show and meet him. No, they're gonna take your show, they're gonna bring it to the person at Fox. If the person at Fox likes it, then maybe it circles back around, but he's gonna have to love it. Instead, you're just listening to this middle person that's, you know, has an agent or a manager, that is an agent or a manager or whatever, that's shopping it. And you gotta trust that they're doing what they're saying to do, sadly. You know, but at least they're agent or a manager. At least I got to that stage where they're agent or a manager doing it, instead of, you know, some guy you met who claims to know somebody, which is where I was 10 years ago, which was, you know, oh, my boy's showing it to Netflix or whatever. Like, but you don't really know, you know. So at least an agent or a manager, we thought at least, was more legitimate. But, you know, I think the most legitimate was the head of Gersh, and I knew that he definitely was probably doing what he was saying he was going to do. But, you know, it ended up where it ended up, which is it ended up on Tubi. So.
And how do you handle if someone, let's say, is rude or discouraging? Maybe they don't know you, you're cold pitching something, or you're trying to call around to get to someone. How do you handle that? That's something that does happen occasionally in this town. And how do you shake it off?
I don't know that I had anybody rude to me, or maybe I'm just oblivious to it, you know? I think when I have a mission, I'm kind of like relentless. And I think if people kind of doubt me, it's always been my strong suit of like, you can doubt me, I'm gonna prove you wrong kind of thing. So I'm very relentless, but you can't force somebody to see if an audience is gonna like it or not. And those people have those positions, you know? And I think the hardest part was trying to get one of them to watch it, you know. I sat down with one of the guys in charge at one of the one of the platforms, and I'm sitting next to the guy who can literally put it on television, but he never, you know, we had a whole conversation, he acted really nice, and we were from the same place in Pennsylvania, and I thought, oh, this guy's gonna watch it. He never responded to any of my text messages, and I sent him the show, and I have no idea if he ever watched it. Probably not, you know? So it's really hard in that way, you know? And that's why when I give people advice, if you meet someone that is in a high position, don't push your stuff onto them, because they're probably not gonna watch it. If you can somehow make that person your friend, or make them, you know, hey, you play tennis, do you do this, do you play golf, do you surf, do you do anything that you have a common bond with, go try to hang out with that person in real life, you know. But it's just really hard to get to the decision makers. It's very rare, and it's rare to meet them. So it's not rare to meet people that say they're decision makers, but it's rare to meet the real people that decision makers, you know. When I made Three Guys on a Couch, someone at Fox called me in and said, we want to do something with you. I thought my whole career had changed. You know, I was going on the Fox lot every week working with them, you know, and probably just handing my ideas to him who was handing to his boss. I was talking to somebody who I thought was a decision maker, who acted like a decision maker, but he was not a decision maker, you know. And so, gosh, it's such a fine line with all that stuff, with trusting, you know, that somebody has the power that they say they have, you know. And in a way, you just kind of got to blindly trust in a way, because if you come with any negativity to somebody who is a decision maker, you could offend them. And then you really put yourself in a bad place. So there's a bit of naiveness to it, and there's a bit of belief, I guess, that has to come with it. And I kind of just shrug it off, you know. At this point, I'm just like, it'll work out when it works out, you know. I think that's the only way I can keep going at it so strongly, which is like, just believe it's going to work, and I don't know when it's going to work, but it's going to work, and keep going at it. So, and I think if you can not have exact expectations, maybe you won't be more disappointed. That's the strategy I use, so I don't know.
Well, you were making it on the lot of a successful studio, so there's some pull there, obviously.
Well, Three Guys on a Couch, I made that and I got on the lot. So we never made anything on the lot. I came to the lot and I was giving him, parole officers, all these ideas to make another show. He didn't want to keep going with that show. He wanted to make another show. Similar show, but something different. Okay. So I came in every week handing him all my ideas. He liked this idea of parole officers for a new TV series where a guy gets falsely arrested for drugs, and then he gets a crazy parole officer that basically takes over his life and destroys it. And he has to do everything the parole officer says, because if he doesn't, he's going to throw him in jail. So they like that idea. They were going to give me $1 million, he said, to shoot the pilot. I thought, man, this is my break. This is it, you know. And then, we're going to do a table read for the executives Friday. Oh, fantastic. Wednesday or Thursday, he calls me and goes, oh, it's canceled now. They have something similar, they say. We're not going to do that anymore. I mean, for me in my 20s to get that call, I mean, it was crushing, you know. So, but luckily, I copywrote Parole Officers, so he didn't own it. He didn't know I was copywriting every idea I was giving him. And I had written it and gave it to him, but I owned it, so we still made it. So I made it independently, Parole Officers, and it's free on Tubi now. So I mean, people can see that idea. I made the TV pilot, and you know, and I'm proud of it for what it was. We made it in 2014, you know.
But you can't copyright an idea.
No.
You did it.
I copyrighted the script.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was coming in every week giving him my ideas, but that particular idea, Parole Officers, he liked a lot. So then I went and I wrote it, copywrote it, brought it back. So when he read it, he was like, I think we love this, we dig this, you know. But then he said they had something similar. Now, was anger management, or not anger management, was, I think they made anger management into a TV show back then, or something like that. So maybe that was similar, maybe he was telling the truth, I don't know. I just know that my whole deal just blew up. 9 months of me coming into the studio, handing this guy all my ideas, and now I have nothing. So I was crushed at the time. But I think that's what's pushed me more into the independent route of filming my own stuff, because it's less and less disappointment, you know. I think the hardest part for me at the stage that I'm at is not making it. I can usually do all that stuff. The hardest part is advertising. The hardest part is I need to get an advertising budget. People need to learn about, like, bad advice. The only way bad advice falls is by not enough people knowing about the show. You know, I need a couple $100,000 worth of advertising, and then it would at least fall or do good, you know, more people would know about it, you know. I've got nothing but positive feedback for the most part, which is nice. But getting above the white noise, getting people to watch it, and to know the story about it's independent too, because everyone compares anything you do independently to a big studio. And it's like you're working way down here and they're working with all this money and all these talented people, and you're working with far less people, whether they're talented or not. So, but you're still compared to that, and you got to be mindful of that when you're making stuff, and take it easy on yourself in a way, you know. Not in the sense of getting a worse quality product, make sure the product's good, but take it easy on the results, because it might not be the exact ones you want.
Was your plan from the start to release Bad Advice on Tubi?
You know, it's so funny. It was the original idea was to release it on Tubi. That's why I made it, because these series were, you know, things were doing so good on Tubi. You know, I see the numbers on Tubi, and there's certain shows and certain things that do 60,000 a month, 100,000 a month on there, especially back then. And so I was like, man, if I could just get a fraction of that with the show, it would be worth it. So I went to work thinking it was going to go on Tubi, yes. And then everybody loved it so much that they talked me into trying to shop it to network. So my plan had shifted. Originally, I made it for Tubi because things were doing so well on Tubi. And then I shifted towards the studio system to try and roll the dice, you know. And I honestly have wasted a year or more where I could have just put it on Tubi because of our distribution company and get it on there sooner, and it probably would have been better, but I did what I did, so.
We hear from independent filmmakers that Tubi is the best paying platform. Would you say that's so?
It's not true. I mean, their ECM rate, which is every 1,000 impressions, they pay a certain amount. There's other places that pay more than them. It's just a fact. You know, Shine TV right now is paying more than them. There's certain platforms that just are paying more. But you got to get on them. You know, you got to get on those platforms. I think that it's a real progression. You know, Tubi really embraced independent film when they first started, and I really hope they don't get away from that. But it seems like most platforms do. You know, they build their platform on independent films, and then they ditch independent films. Netflix did it, sadly. You know, they built their whole thing on independent films, and then they get big time, and then they ditch independent film. Instead of at least having an independent film section, which I wish they would. Amazon Prime built their thing on independent film, and then eventually now they got rid of independent film for the most part. And Tubi has now built their platform on independent film, and I really hope, I've heard rumors that they're going to get away from independent film, but I don't know that. But I really hope that they don't. So,
do you think they would still use their AVOD model?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, their bread and butter is the fact that people watch that for free and commercials. Now, the split might be different, you know. There's certain platforms, Freevee plays 8 cents an hour, Freevee. And that's Amazon Prime's like other platform. But yeah, so the different ones pay differently. They could pay their pay scale. They have changed it since I've been with them. You know, they were paying one thing and now they're paying something different. So things change. It never stays the same. You know, that's the guarantee, and it's moving very fast. You know, it's crazy because you know, Tubi was doing independent films and doing $200,000 independent films and giving people a shot at that, and that changed. They were doing $1 million films with certain people, and that changed. Like, it just changes so quick that if you hear about something and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that, and then a year later you come, it's probably going to be different. So it's very hard to kind of like know something's one way when it changes so quickly, and sometimes it's changed completely before you're done your project. So if you think you're going to do it for one reason, just because of a platform doing something, it's not a smart reason to do it. So it's crazy how fast it changes.
But you have heard of filmmakers making 6 figures in a relatively short amount of time, or thereabouts, 6 figures?
Close to 6 figures in a month, yes.
Wow. Some
people have made 6 figures almost monthly on Tubi, yeah. I've seen the numbers myself, yeah.
What genre was this?
You know, it seems like, you know, I hear a lot also, not just the numbers that I've seen, but from everything that I gather from people, the things that do well on there, horror films do well on there, gangster films do well on there. For a long time, I would hear people say that Tubi was the black Netflix. You know, I heard that a lot from people. That black cinema, black film, whatever you want to call it, was doing really well on there for a while. And I think after a while, they got so much of it that still now there's some films that, in the beginning, I think if you got on there early, it was very easy to rise to the top. And now Tubi has so much content that people are getting lost on there. It's a very different thing than when they started. But there's also more eyes, you know. Tubi had 30, 40 million subscribers 4 years ago, and now they have 70 million or more subscribers. So more eyes are going that direction because it's a free platform. The filmmakers get paid from commercials on there, and the viewers get to watch free stuff because they're watching commercials. So,
how did you get your show on Tubi?
Well, I work for a distribution company, and so that distribution company gets it on platforms, and I find films for them. So I find films for them, and then I help those filmmakers get on certain platforms, like Pluto and Tubi and Shine TV are the main three that we help people get on right now. And Amazon Prime, but Amazon Prime is mostly for purchase. You can still submit to their thing, but they take very, very seldom things on Amazon Prime for free. And, you know, WALLY Got Wasted was on Amazon Prime for free, you know, their streaming platform, and they totally took us for a role. I mean, WALLY Got Wasted went viral on Amazon Prime. I had 33,000 people a month watching it on Amazon Prime, and I only got $1,200 a month. It was insane. You know, I would look at the numbers and it was like, oh my God, like so many people have seen the film. You know, and WALLY Got Wasted has lasted a long time. Like I still get reviews, almost like one a review or rating on IMDb, like a month, a week. You know, it varies, of course, but it seems like that movie still carries. You know, and WALLY Got Wasted still is on Tubi. It's been on Tubi for four years, around 4 years, and I still have thousands of people a month watching it, which is pretty impressive for a movie that's now 5 years old. Which is cool. I feel like once you get up in the algorithm, you stay up if it's performing well. I don't know their exact algorithm, but if you get on there and you get lost, it's really hard to get up in it. And hopefully you get on any streaming platform, I'm sure. But if you can get up in that algorithm, you're doing well. But I've also heard like with Netflix and some of these things that don't really take independent film, that you actually negotiate in your deal to be in the top 10 on Netflix and these kinds of things, which I was shocked to hear. I didn't know those things existed. I thought, oh, it's in the top 10 movies because it's so good or whatever. Nah, they negotiated that in their deal. I want to be in the top 10 for 6 weeks. That's what I want for my deal. You know, those are all negotiations, which makes sense. I mean, it's their platform. They make up the rules. They can do whatever they want. So, you know.
Do you know what territories are watching your movies on any of these platforms?
Well, you can look up any platform and know what countries they're in, you know. I don't know that any of them really specifically say what territories. Amazon Prime had a very detailed detailed spreadsheet of like showing you things. Tubi far less. You know, they don't really give you all the information you'd like to have for advertising, because if you were going to advertise and you knew like everybody in this Denver liked your show, you could advertise more. They don't really give you that when you're an independent filmmaker, at least. Sadly, I get how many impressions you had and from what date to what date, and I don't get much more information than that, sadly. And a lot of filmmakers want it, and I understand. You know, I've helped maybe 20 to 30 some films get on Tubi and some of these other platforms, and yeah, you're an independent film, so I mean, you know, you don't have maybe the push the studio have to find out more information and stuff like that. We're a small fish still, even if we have 100 films, 600 films, whatever we have that we're helping. I found 30 some films, but the company we have is like 600, some 700 films on a lot of these platforms. So,
are you worried that the success that filmmakers are finding with Tubi is fleeting, won't last?
I do worry about it, yeah. I definitely do worry about it. Because you've seen it in the history books. Like I said, Netflix was built on an independent film and then they bailed on independent film. Amazon Prime built on independent film and then they bailed on independent film. It's like how these studios basically build their product, because if I get my film on Tubi, I'm going to tell everybody I know to watch it. And then they, you know, people that don't know about Tubi go, well, what's Tubi? You know, so I find myself, WALLY Got Wasted's been on Tubi for 5 years. I find myself explaining to people what Tubi is. It's free advertising. If you embrace independent film, it's free advertising, especially when you're first starting a platform. So there's so many people that I go, it's on Tubi, and they go, oh, I don't have Tubi. I go, you don't need, it's a free platform. You have to watch commercials, but it's free. You can get it on your phone, on your computer, it'll go on your TV, I find myself literally working for Tubi because my film's on Tubi. Like, I am advertising for them as much as you could say they're advertising for me. I mean, they're getting me to people that ultimately wouldn't see the movie if I'm up in their algorithm. But, and I'm incredibly grateful to Tubi for helping me find an audience and embracing independent film, and I hope they continue to embrace independent film.
Do you know which movies you're sort of recommended with? Like, a lot of times you watch it and then there'll be, if you like this, then you'll like this one. Do you know which ones you're lumped in, which group?
I know what films come up after mine, and they're kind of like stoner comedy kind of stuff, independent stuff. I don't see that I'm connected to any big studio stuff. I'm always looking. It's interesting because I have Parole Officers on Tubi. I did have 3 Guys on a Couch on Tubi. It's not on there anymore. But Parole Officers is on Tubi, WALLY Got Wasted is on Tubi, and Bad Advice is on Tubi. I have 3 projects of my own that's on Tubi. And I think the show Bad Advice somehow their algorithm hasn't tagged to other things. And I don't think that's helped it. I think WALLY Got Wasted has been tagged in other films. And so when you watch this, it'll come up under recommendations. That's a huge part of if you're making money on there, is if it somehow gets in with other stuff. It's funny that it's connected with other independent films on there, but it's all their algorithm, which I've never worked at Tubi. I don't know fully how it works. But it definitely helps you if you're connected to something that's doing well on there. It can make and break the difference of whether you're making money or not making money, that's for sure.
What camera did you use for Bad Advice?
We used a mix of things, but mostly it was shot on a Blackmagic, believe it or not. The Blackmagics are just phenomenal cameras right now. And the things that they're doing, a new Blackmagic is coming out, and it's going to change the game from everything that I hear. The sensor's better than the Arri Alexa. And so that's going to be really interesting. But my new film, I'm shooting on an RE35 with like Cook lenses. I mean, I'm using top-notch stuff. I think the show with comedy, I wasn't using real contrasty stuff and warm summer stuff. We shot most of the show at Magic Hour. So it was just what I could get away with, to get the product that I wanted. And keep the budget low. A Blackmagic was a lot cheaper of a camera than an Arri Alexa, which is a $100,000 camera. And then, but it was also shot on drones. You're not using the Blackmagic when you're using the drone shots, and we use a lot of drone shots. But I used a good drone. We had a 4K drone, one of the top-notch drones. I think that was important. And yeah, most of it was shot on that. And I actually own Zeiss lenses, so because it was renting the lenses was going to be $100 a day, and lenses are more important almost than the camera. People don't realize that lenses are that important, but the glass you use determines the look. I mean, lighting's obviously the number one most important thing, but the glass you use is so important for the look, that you want to get. So if you use some cheap lenses, you can kind of tell. And if you will use really expensive ones, the bokeh in the background's way prettier and way different. So I prefer, Cook lenses. There's some other really good lenses out there, but we use Zeiss lenses on the show. And I bought them because, if I was going to shoot 54 days, you might as well do the math and figure out if it's cheaper to buy them or close to the same amount you're going to spend renting them. So.
Did you buy a Blackmagic?
I did not. My DP owned a Blackmagic, and we found some cheat codes in a way. There's some pieces of equipment that we used that are kind of cheating, and I don't want to say it on camera. Everyone will do it, but it makes it look. We found a way basically to add a whole stop of light when we're filming, which is such a huge part of. We needed less light, so it was a huge part of it. We found some cheat ways on equipment that do that kind of stuff. So we got really lucky with that stuff. And really lucky with the look. But I think polishing your stuff is so very important too. You know, I always bring it to an amazing colorist. Roy, our colorist, is an amazing colorist in the show. And then sound mixing, and then sound effects, you know, and sound composing. Like, how you polish your product is one of the reasons some people are like, oh, your product's so good. It's because I hire the right people to polish it, you know. Using lenses is a huge part. You know, I get films sometimes to help them, want me to help them distribute it, and it has no depth of field. There's no lenses. You got to use lenses. I mean, nowadays it's crazy because you couldn't even do that back 2007. You had to use film, or any high def thing didn't have lenses. Now you can put lenses, I think, on a phone, which is insane. But it's just all these things that you can do to make your project better. Lenses and lighting, if you learn how to light, using the correct lenses, and polishing it at the end, you know. What camera is important? Not as important as not doing, the difference between not doing the project and doing the project. And I find it funny that a lot of people in their first feature will spend so much money on renting the camera, getting the camera, but it's their first feature. The chances of you hitting a home run are very slim, for starters. But why spend the 70 grand on renting the camera for that period of time? Most of the money is for renting the camera, $1,000 a day or whatever it is, when you could have used the Blackmagic, which is way cheaper, got something that most people aren't going to notice the difference when you're really learning, in a way. If you're doing your first feature, you're generally learning. Unless you did 20 short films or something, you're learning a lot on that. Why not go to battle with something that you're not spending money on every day? Because a Blackmagic is like, you could probably get one for $1,000. And you could rent a camera one day, an Arri Alexa one day for that, perhaps, or 2 days, whatever you can get it for. Buy the camera, learn, you know, that was what I would say. Get better at your craft.
And so at what point did you decide to buy the lenses instead of rent them? You just realized the math, and you said...
Before we really started. Yeah, I realized it was like, my goal was 50 days of shooting. I ended up having 4 extra days. Most of them were pickup days. But I basically looked at the whole show, which was 230 pages we filmed. And I was like, I think I can do this in 50 days. And I did it pretty much in 50 days. I mean, the 4 extra days were, one of the days got cut because it rained. So it's like that day wasn't, you know, there's certain things that happen. But I was pretty proud of what I did with the 50 days and filming. So, yeah.
Which episode of Bad Advice has the best cinematography?
Gosh, the best cinematography. I would think, I don't know, it stands out to me, episode 7. It ends in the dark, like on the side of the road, and I just love the look. But so many of the episodes I love because you have, the show takes place in South Bay, and you have those hills of Palos Verdes. And so the one particular scene in episode 7, you know, I would always try to get those hills in the background, as many lights as possible in the background with that hill, and it just looks really cool, you know. And I think the brake lights are like red light on their faces. I just love how it looks. But it's funny because location scouting has a lot to do with the look of it too, though. Because like, gosh, for that whole year, I was just walking around the city and around South Bay, and to constantly be like, I think I could shoot here. I think I could shoot there. This looks good. That looks good. You know, I'm constantly looking for a cool looking frame. I think I just do that naturally in my life. I'm obsessed with that kind of stuff, and so, and I geek out on it. You know, I'll go on a hike and be like, oh, I love that frame, man. How do I accumulate that frame or that frame? Episode 4 takes place a lot on the Palos Verdes cliff sides, you know, and so you have some amazing views there too. And you get like a 200mm lens and get far away, and you can get all that background in there that's so amazing. And so, yeah, episode 4 is a good one. Episode 7, you know, I would say the only one that's slightly lacking is when the clinic, we're inside a lot. You know, I like outdoor kind of stuff more. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all pretty solid. I think it looks solid. Most people think it was shot with an Arri Alexa and a full crew, you know, and it looks legitimate, you know. I mean, I think so.
What did you use for sound for your actors?
I don't know exactly. You asked me that question. I think no, I didn't send it to you because I don't think he sent it to me. Kevin, my sound guy, has all professional equipment. He's a really good sound guy. He's like the best sound guy that I've ever worked with for the most part. And or one of, at least, I don't want to diss anybody, but one of the best sound people I've ever worked with. And sadly, he couldn't make it during the strike and during COVID. Well, during COVID, he didn't even make it until the strike. And he moved to like Atlanta or something. He's not even doing sound work right now, which is so sad because he's so talented of a sound person. But he had some top-notch equipment. Most of the days, we'd lav everybody and we'd use a boom mic. So, and when you really need to guerrilla somewhere, it's so much better to use lavs, and because you don't see somebody holding up a microphone, you know. So you could guerrilla stuff so much easier if you had to. Just have everybody laved up and kind of slightly have the camera off to the side, and we had the black magic, so it was a lot easier to hide that camera. And you know, we could get away with guerrilla and stuff. We had permission to shoot so many places, but occasionally we wouldn't have permission and I'd still go for it. I'm never afraid to, you know. I mean, just this last weekend for my new feature, I just needed one shot at a gas station and we ended up staying at the gas station for like 2 hours and 40 minutes and nobody told us to leave. You know, an RE35, like shooting, we're filming, and this guy came out, looked at us once or twice, and he never told us to leave the gas station. It was pretty crazy. And my crew was I had a bigger crew, and we were all kind of just laughing because I had a backup plan that we were going to go to, and I was like, well, this particular location had all the gas pumps locked though, and so I needed to get the gas pump going into the car. That was my opening shot. So I needed a gas station that was open, and so we went and shot at the gas station, thinking I was just going to get the one shot. Let's just grab the one shot and get out of here. And then we went, you know, we did the second shot. You know, let's show a medium shot of the pump in the car. You know, let's get that out of the way. And then we shot that, and I looked at my DP, who was a phenomenal guy, Steven. This guy is phenomenal DP, and I said, you want to just keep trying? He said, yeah, let's just keep going until they kick us out. And we stayed for 2 hours and 40 minutes and he didn't kick us out. And I'm not suggesting anybody does this kind of stuff. You know, you could probably get kicked out or maybe get in trouble in some kind of way, but we did, and we totally got away with it. So,
let's imagine you had to teach a class on producing a movie. Where would you start?
Oh gosh, you could start a million different places. Just producing, let's X out directing and the other things. What's the budget? Figure out what the budget is, you know. Where can you cut costs? I would think cost would be the first thing as a producer. I'm sad to say it, but you shouldn't really pay for one location if you're doing an independent film with no money. I hear people paying for locations. I would literally I would write down a location because the show had 100 locations, right? Bad Advice had 100 locations to find. I write down the location and I would literally go to 30 different places until somebody would say, yeah, you can film here. And each location was like that. So as a producer, you have to look at places where you don't have to spend money. You can do anything for any amount of money. That's the hardest part when somebody's like, well, how much money do you need? And I'm thinking, that's an impossible question to answer, because whatever money you have, that's the money you need. You got what you got. Stop looking and start doing. You know, you have what you have. I mean, there's certain things that obviously, if you want to destroy a building or something, you know, you better learn special effects, or you better find a building that wants to blow it up. But you know, it's basically producing is that. It's finding a team around you that's phenomenal. Where can you cut costs, you know? And if you're a creative producer, like there's so many films that come to me, now that I'm helping people get distribution, there's so many films that come to me and I wish they come to me sooner. Because it's like, if you're cutting from a room to a room, how much would it have cost for us to just go use a drone? I mean, like, if you find somebody who owns a drone and maybe they'll come out for free and you go shoot all these drone shots. And that just added so much to your film because you're not going from room to room, you know. I never let money stop me. So it's kind of like whatever money we got, let's do it, you know. I'm never afraid to tell anybody as a producer, we don't have any more money. It's either you can do it for free or you can't, you know. Because if they say no, I'm going to go ask somebody else who potentially will do it for free. And you got to live by that as a producer, you know. You have as much money as you have. You can't let it hurt your product. So if somebody's out for money, get them out of there, you know. You don't have it at that point. Now, if I was making a studio movie, maybe I'd scratch all kinds of people's backs and get them extra money here and there. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And you can't be afraid to say you don't have it. I think it depends what process the producer, or what stage of the process the producer comes in on. Because the producer could come in as when it's written, and it's only written, you know, that's ideal for a lot of filmmakers. But he might have ideas on how to cut budget in the script. Or this isn't clear in the script. If he comes on as a creative producer, maybe you could change this or that. Maybe you could cast this person or that person. I know this person who could do that. Producer's job, that's the crazy thing about producing. So many people don't know what a producer is. And it's because producer means so many things, you know. And if you're on in the beginning, you could help craft this whole thing and help them save money in all these different ways. I generally don't produce for anybody else other than myself because it's such a detailed job. Like I said, I'm starting to do some projects where people are bringing me on as one of the lead actors and I'm helping them produce. And I save them so much money because it's, if you come on as the beginning, a lot of it has to do with money, but also creatively pointing it in the right direction, you know. On set, I'm usually acting and directing, so I don't get to do that so much. But if I was on someone else's project and I wasn't acting that particular day or something like that, a producer could do so many things. I mean, on WALLY Got Wasted, I had to talk to police and security guards and convince them to let us stay there, let us keep filming. You know, that's going to fall on a producer if you're doing a low budget project, is solving problems. I mean, that's your number one job as a producer, is solving whatever problems come. First, in the pre-production stage, it's trying to see problems before they come and fixing them, getting organization together. During shooting, problems do happen. It's inevitable. Are you going to whine about it? Are you going to complain about it? Or are you going to fix it? So there's no point in whining or complaining. It's literally, okay, how do we fix it? Let's start thinking out of the box. If this side of the room blew off in a tornado, we can only use that side of the room. So what can we do in this part of the room to only use that? And sometimes that makes films better, you know. And on a smaller project, on my project, since I'm producing and directing, maybe in my brain, maybe that's a director's job, but in my brain, a lot of that's a producer's job, you know. So, and in post, shucks, if I came on just as a post-production producer, which actually I did. Actually, there's a film that we just finished, and I came on basically as a producer, just in post. And they didn't finish the film for like years. And somebody was willing to throw a little bit of money at finishing it. And so I brought on the colorist. I brought on the sound mixer. I could have brought on a composer, but they wanted to use their own composer. That's fine. You know, I literally had a strict producing position. So I know that particular one, it was like creatively I allowed the director, I'd be like, well, are you happy? Okay, then we're done. You know, I didn't take any creative input on that because I didn't want to. Now, some of them I might take some creative input and try to convince the person who's making those decisions, because it's the director's decision, creative decisions, to go a certain direction. But, you know, that was just strictly business, you know, and polishing the film to be the best it can be, you know.
And what is that? What is polishing it?
It's color correction, it's sound mixing. When I say polishing, I mean all the post-production of a film. And all those little things make such a humongous difference, you know. Just us, you know, we can hear birds in the background as we sit here. And those birds, if we were filming a scene here, need to be put in post. You know, there's no microphone that's generally going to get that clearly and good quality on the other side of a wall. and then show up in the filming. If you just filmed and recorded it, it wouldn't show up. So you need a sound mixer, a sound effect person. They're two different jobs. But the person doing the Foley needs to then put that bird in, you know. So they would clean up, like for Bad Advice, they would clean, the guys that I do sound mixing, they would clean it all up. They would basically take out all the sounds except for the sounds of the actors. Then they take everything else out, and then they put everything back in, which is not what I recorded. It's birds chirping, it's footsteps, it's all that stuff. It's doing the sound effects and the Foley, which create an atmosphere, which allows, it just helps a viewer become more invested in your film. And if you're not thinking about that as an independent filmmaker, you're not really doing your job well. And I see so many independent films that don't think about that stuff. But that stuff is so important to create an atmosphere for the audience to believe that they're watching something real. And the more things that put them in that room, the more they can get invested in your story, you know. If you have good actors, if you have good lighting, you got to have good sound. You know, sound is half the film. You know, it's more than half the film. How many people watching silent films? Nobody. How many people are listening to things with no visual? So I would argue that audio is more important than visual. Now, I mean, they're both important. I'm not dissing either one, but it's a very important part of the puzzle. So,
what about attaching talent?
I have a unique perspective on all that, in the sense that I've been turned down so much because I don't have big names. At some point, maybe I'll sell out and direct something with big names in it. And when I say sell out, I mean go with the flow maybe a little more than I do, you know. Creatively, I want to prove and do the things I want to do. And if you start getting more money involved and talented names, I'm guessing I'm going to lose control have a lot less control. And I'm okay with that at some point. But right now, some of the creative things that I'm doing, such as my feature that I'm shooting now, I just really wanted to make what I've envisioned, and I didn't want anyone to get in the way of that. So, but attaching talent is not an easy thing to do, but it's a very niche thing too. Somebody might know somebody who can get somebody to read something or watch your short or whatever, and you get them interested. There's no exact science to that, you know. What makes people do the things they do, you know. If you can somehow inspire an artist, an actor, to be in your thing, feel lucky and embrace it, and hopefully they're good to work with, you know. The reason the names are important is not necessarily, it's funny because there's a lot of films that are made that, you know, that bomb at the theater and have tons of names in it. So it's not necessarily that important for audiences, but it's important to get to the next stage, to get the studio people to pay attention to you and to look at the things. If you have names involved, they understand that language. Even though they don't all follow that rule, they do look at things more if names are in it. So if you can get them attached, it ultimately can help you in the long run to get a deal, from what I've seen, to get better distribution, to get, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's not the answer to everything, but it helps the, you know, the soup you're making to be better. And it definitely helps agents, managers, that level of people to get interested, for sure.